Chapter 1962. A gleam of light flashed through the eyes of Jianshun, Shun Jian, and Siyu. Amagami's sudden actions had filled them with caution. Even Houston was slightly surprised, because he was not the one who had acted like this. Instead, it was Amagami's own reaction. Everything that had unfolded before him had exceeded Houston's expectations. Only Fairy Haoyue remained calm, without any change in her expression. This was the confidence that came from her great strength. However, in the next moment, all of their eyes suddenly narrowed. Even Fairy Haoyue was no exception. Everyone stared ahead in shock. Enveloped by the red light from Amagami, the scene before them changed. The stone wall at the end of the corridor that had originally been a dead end had silently vanished, revealing a long, winding path. It was dark red inside, radiating with a chilling aura. What a profound formation. Even I failed to sense it. Fairy Haoyue frowned as she stared at the winding path up ahead as she murmured. The light in her eyes flickered, and she looked at the Empyrean demon orb. She sank into her thoughts and became surprised. This should be the correct path. Houston stared ahead. After studying the path for a while, he called everyone over. They walked forward under Amagami's red light. Along the way, none of them left Amagami's range because they had discovered that only within Amagami's red light could they successfully pass through the illusionary formation that even Fairy Haoyue had failed to sense. Once they left Amagami's range, they would appear in the same dead end again. The stone wall in front of them seemed to be solid as well. They felt heavy when they touched it with their hands. When they passed through the illusionary formation through Amagami, it was like they had passed through space. They had left their original world and arrived in another world. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to tremble violently. Its red light flickered as well. Swish! Suddenly, Amagami turned into a streak of red light and completely broke free from Houston's control. It continued to rush forward. Oh no, I can't control Amagami anymore. Houston's face changed. This was the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, so danger lurked everywhere. If they caused too great of a disturbance, they would be exposed. Chase it, Jianshun called out. They immediately pursued Amagami. Amagami was a god artifact, after all. Moreover, it possessed the artifact spirit. With the speed of a god artifact, it was impossible for Jianshun and the other overgods to catch up to it. In just a short while, the distance between them and Amagami grew larger and larger. If it were not for the vague connection between Houston and Amagami, they probably would not have been able to find any traces of Amagami at all. Don't resist. I'll take you with me. At this moment, Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out. With that, gentle moonlight force revolved around Jianshun and the others. Afterwards, their speed suddenly skyrocketed, and they pursued Amagami at an extremely terrifying speed. They moved so quickly that even Jianshun and the others were unable to see their surroundings clearly. Amagami turned into a red streak of light as it rapidly flew through the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. However, it was only a god artifact after all. It was impossible for it to move through the headquarters as silently as Fairy Haoyue, avoiding everyone's eyes and ears. As a result, the pulses of energy and the presence of a god artifact that Amagami gave off as it flew were naturally discovered by many people. Who is it? Many people called out within the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. At the same time, powerful senses of the soul swept over from all directions, directly locking onto the Empyrean demon orb. That's a god artifact. Whose god artifact is that? Why haven't I seen it before? It doesn't belong to our heavenly demon religion. Oh no, there's an intruder. Instantly, the surroundings were filled with people. Divine King Realm experts either walked out of secret rooms or appeared from the void covered by formations. They came from all directions and chased after Amagami. There's an intruder in the headquarters. Quickly informed the vice leader. An old divine king hovered in the void. His ancient eyes shone brightly. He locked onto Amagami with his soul, and his ancient voice reverberated throughout the entire space. However, as the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion, This ancient castle had layers upon layers of formations and many spaces within. The place that Jinshin and the others had entered with Amagami's help was clearly another space that had been opened up within the castle. Hence, the old god's voice was only transmitted within this space, and did not reach all the spaces within the castle. However, even with that being the case, the old God King's words were enough to inform all the God Kings on the floor. However, at this moment, the white-clothed fairy silently appeared behind the old Divine King. She gently pressed her slender, white hand against the old Divine King's head. Then, she pressed down gently. With a bang, the old Divine King's head exploded. He was directly destroyed in both body and soul. A mighty Divine King realm expert had died just like that without being able to put up any resistance. He did not even know who had killed him before he died. Fairy Haoyue hovered in the air. Moonlight force revolved around her. She coldly stared at her surroundings. Then, she formed a seal with her hands in front of her. A palm-sized full moon appeared in her hand. The power contained within it was terrifying enough to destroy the world. Jinshin and the others paled in shock. In the next moment, the full moon suddenly shattered, turning into several dozen strands of moonlight force that were as thick as fingers. Like arrows, they shot into the surroundings with terrifying might. Spurt, 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 spurt. All the exposed Divine Kings on this floor were struck by the moonlight force without exception. They did not even have the time to cry out before their souls shattered and dispersed. At that moment, the entire floor fell silent. Jinshin, Siyu, Houston, and Shunjian stood behind Fairy Haoyue. They were all shocked when they personally witnessed how Fairy Haoyue had killed several Divine Kings effortlessly. Even though they knew the primordial realm was very powerful, they could not help but feel shocked when they personally witnessed the might of a primordial realm expert. None of the Divine Kings were weak. Any single one of them was not something the four of them could fend off. As a matter of fact, they could not even flee. However, they were so fragile before Fairy Haoyue. It was true that Divine Kings were like ants. Our whereabouts have been exposed. The three vice leaders should return very soon, Fairy Haoyue said gently. Originally, she was confident that she could infiltrate the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion silently without being discovered by anyone. However, her plan had been ruined by Amagami. However, Fairy Haoyue did not make a fuss about it. She directly chased after Amagami with Jinshin and the others. When Fairy Haoyue caught up to Amagami, Amagami was hovering beside an extremely huge pool of blood. The pool of blood was extremely huge, like a vast ocean. From afar, the sky and sea seemed to be connected, stretching as far as the eye could see. Huge waves surged within the sea of blood, kicking up waves of blood that were several hundred meters tall. When they struck the air, they produced great booms. Chilling winds blew in the air above the sea of blood, forming an extremely huge whirlpool that revolved. Vaguely, countless faces seemed to appear as they shrieked out. This seemed like a scene straight out of hell. It was chilling and terrifying. Jinshin, Shunjian, Houston, and Siyu stood beside the pool of blood as they stared at the boundless sea of blood. They were all very stern. This should be the greatest secret of the Empyrean demon cult. They started this war just to create this scene, said Jinshin. Fairy Haoyue stared at the churning sea of blood before her. Soon after, she stared at the whistling, chilling winds in the air. After a moment of silence, she muttered, gathering endless blood to form an ocean, then using a formation to absorb the essence of the blood, condensing it into 9 blood pearls. Gathering the soul force of endless souls into one, extracting their essence, and using a formation to refine it into 9 soul pearls. Just what is the heavenly demon religion trying to do? What soul pearls and blood pearls? Jinshin asked. He was also looking around, but he did not discover anything other than the sea of blood and the chilling winds. At the bottom of the sea of blood, there are 9 blood pearls that contain powerful energy. The chilling winds in the air are actually not wind, but the soul force absorbed by the formation. The soul force also nurtures 9 soul pearls. With your current strength, You can't see these things, Fairy Haoyue said. Jianshan said sternly. Has the heavenly demon religion started this war to gather endless blood and condense them into blood pearls and tremendous soul force into soul pearls? Why would they do that? Fairy Haoyue shook her head. I don't understand that either. Even though the essence of the energy within the blood pearls can skyrocket a person's cultivation and the soul force within the soul pearls can strengthen a person's soul, these pearls and soul pearls are condensed from weaker cultivators in the end. Their effects are basically negligible to stronger experts. With the heavenly demon religion's current strength, there's no need for them to go through so much trouble to set up all of this. Fairy Haoyue looked at the surroundings of the pool of blood, and she became stern. She said sternly, moreover, the entire pool of blood is protected by an extremely powerful formation. The formation is so powerful that even I shiver in fear. Let alone infinite primes, even chaotic primes will probably die if they fall into the formation. From the strength of the formation, the pool of blood is far more important than everything in the heavenly demon religion's branch on the cloud plane. Apart from the rumored Great Elder, I really can't think of anyone else who can cast down such a terrifying killing formation in the heavenly demon religion. Jinshin's face changed slightly when he heard about the Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion. He stared at the pool of blood and said sternly, did the Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion personally set up this place? The Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion was an existence that all the peak clans on the cloud plane feared. If it were not for the Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion, just the 3 vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion's branch on the cloud plane would not be able to cause much of a ruckus. As a result, Jianshan naturally struggled to remain calm when he heard that the Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion had personally set up this place. P.S. Please listen to Xiaoyao's public message. Once there are any changes to the update, Xiaoyao will inform you through the message. You can find me by searching Xingxingxiao 110. Chapter 1963. At this moment, the boundless sea of blood suddenly surged even more. Even the chilling winds formed from the tremendous amount of soul force in the surroundings became even more violent. Fairy Haoyue's eyes flickered with light as she stared at the sea of blood before her. She said, the heavenly demon religion is wantonly slaughtering people outside. They've paid the price of countless lives to condense these 9 blood beads and soul beads. At the same time, the 9 blood beads and soul beads constantly absorb the purification from the sea of blood and soul force, allowing them to become even more powerful. If the blood beads and soul beads aren't removed, the heavenly demon religion's slaughter won't stop. They'll continue until they're satisfied with the 9 blood beads and soul beads. Fairy Haoyue, can you take away the 9 blood beads and soul beads? We can't let the heavenly demon religion continue like this, Jinshin asked. Fairy Haoyue shook her head powerlessly. She gently sighed. The formation protecting this place is too powerful. I can't do anything about it. At this moment, Amagami suddenly arrived above Houston. A layer of blood-red light poured down from Amagami, enveloping Houston completely. A vague connection had already been established between Houston and Amagami's artifact spirit. When he was enveloped by the blood-red light, a thought from the artifact spirit was transmitted into Houston's head. Houston was stunned before becoming surprised. He raised his head and looked at the Amagami above him in some shock. After a moment of hesitation, he said to Jianshin and the others, Amagami's artifact spirit has sent a message to me. I can bypass the obstructions of the formation and enter. Fairy Haoyue's eyes narrowed. She suddenly turned her head and stared at Houston. More accurately, she stared at the Amagami above Houston's head. After staring at it for a while, she said to Houston, you need to understand that the formation is so powerful that even chaotic primes can die. If you really believe the artifact spirit and enter the formation, even I won't be able to save you once you encounter danger. Uncle Xiao, don't take the risk. Jianshin stopped him as well. He deeply understood just how terrifying the great elders of the heavenly demon religion were. He refused to believe that a single artifact spirit could bypass the formation cast down by such an expert. Unless Amagami had a great background, such as the Inata Tower or some other heaven-defying god artifact. However, according to what he knew, Amagami was only the famed treasure of the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the celestial demon saint. Although it was a god artifact, it was still quite far away from the peak. Shun Jian and Siyu also stopped Houston. They did not want Houston to take the risk and leave his life in the hands of an artifact spirit that could easily go out of control. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared behind Jianshin and the others. All the space within the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion gently trembled at that moment as a tremendous pressure permeated the surroundings. All the formations within the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion had been activated at that moment. Countless formations were linked together, forming an extraordinarily large killing formation in the end. It enveloped the entire castle. The three vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion have returned. They've activated all the formations. Fairy Haoyue stared behind her and said calmly. Jianshun, Siyu, Houston, and Shun Jian were unable to remain as calm as Fairy Haoyue. Their hearts all sank as they became extremely stern. There's no time. Let me try and see if I can destroy the arrangements the heavenly demon religion has set up here. Houston said firmly. Ignoring everyone's persuasion, he charged into the formation with a resolute expression without hesitation. Apart from his desire to destroy the heavenly demon religion's plan to condense blood and soul beads, there was another important factor behind his actions, which was the artifact spirit. Through his communication with the artifact spirit, Houston understood that there was something extremely important to the artifact spirit here. At the same time, there was also a great opportunity that belonged to him. Amagami sat on top of Houston's head. At the same time, he circulated the heavenly demon arts he cultivated. Demonic chi revolved around his body as he entered the terrifying killing formation that protected the pool of blood. As soon as he entered the killing formation, a terrifying killing intent permeated the surroundings. Just this killing intent alone was enough to almost tear Houston to pieces. If it were not for his heavenly demon arts and Amagami, he probably would not have been able to withstand the killing intent from the formation. Jianshun, Shun Jian, and Siyu stood outside the formation. They all stared at Houston nervously. However, they could not help but let out a sigh of relief when they saw Houston enter the killing formation and advance through it with great difficulty without being attacked by the formation. At the same time, the three of them were extremely puzzled. Why was such a powerful killing formation ineffective against Houston? Fairy Haoyue stared at the Amagami above Houston's head. She was surprised. She understood the terror of the killing formation better than anyone else. It was a supreme formation that could kill chaotic primes, yet Houston, who was just an overgod, was actually able to move through it freely with a god artifact. She was extremely shocked by this. Amagami, the heavenly demon religion. Amagami, the heavenly demon religion. Fairy Haoyue murmured as the light in her eyes flickered. Houston advanced through the killing formation with great difficulty. He was like a leaf in the wind, about to fall. Even though the killing formation was not activated, the invisible, terrifying killing intent was still difficult for him to endure. Every single step seemed to require all of his strength. As a result, he advanced extremely slowly. At this moment, three figures hidden within the demonic aura gathered together in the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. The three of us have searched the entire headquarters, but we've failed to find the intruder. Moreover, we activated the formation as soon as possible, so even if the intruder wants to escape, it's impossible for him to do so without anyone noticing. Where's the intruder hiding? One of them growled. If Jianshun had heard the voice, he would have immediately recognized it as the voice of one of the three vice leaders. Huan, don't tell me the intruder has gone to the forbidden grounds, said Huanyue. Her voice was rather weak, and as soon as she finished speaking, she coughed violently. Clearly, she was injured. The forbidden grounds? Impossible. Vice sect leader Huayin and the other vice sect leader cried out as soon as Yi Huayue finished speaking. The monstrous demonic aura around them began to pulse violently. If one could see their faces, it would not be difficult to discover that they had paled when they heard that the intruder had entered the forbidden grounds. Afterwards, the three of them shot toward the forbidden grounds as quickly as they could with a single movement. Even though they did not believe that the intruder could find the hidden forbidden grounds, even though they knew that the Great Elder had personally cast down a supreme formation in the forbidden grounds, they still did not dare to let their guard down. It is better to believe it than not to believe it. This was because they knew just how important the forbidden grounds were. If anything happened to the forbidden grounds, the Great Elder would never forgive them. Jianshun, Shun Jian, and Siyu all let out a sigh of relief as they stood beside the pool of blood. Houston had successfully passed through the killing formation and arrived above the pool of blood safely. Afterwards, under Amagami's protection, he directly dove into the pool of blood below, vanishing from the sights of Jianshin and the others. However, Fairy Haoyue raised an eyebrow. She looked back and said, "The three vice leaders are hurrying over. Stay here and don't go out. I'll stop the three of them. Remember, if you don't want to get into trouble, don't reveal your identities to anyone." With that, Fairy Haoyu vanished from where she had been standing. At the same time, a strand of primordial realm laws permeated the surroundings of the pool of blood, completely purging the presences of Jianshin and the others. Chapter 1964. Around 5 minutes later, Houston, who had dived to the bottom of the sea of blood, finally resurfaced. His aged face carried an expression of unconcealable excitement and joy, and his eyes stared unblinkingly at his hands. To no surprise, he held 9 thumb-sized beads of blood in his hands. Every single bead was translucent and extremely bright. They shone with a dazzling red light, just like red agate stones. However, every single one of the 9 beads pulsed with extremely great energy, enough to even surprise over gods. Even the Divine King's face changed. The energy within the 9 beads was just too great. If they exploded in a single moment, they would be able to unleash devastating power that could easily kill over gods. Jianshun, Shun Jian, and Siyu noticed the 9 beads of blood in Houston's hands as well. They were all very stern. These 9 beads should be the beads condensed from the essence of endless blood that Fairy Haoyue mentioned. The heavenly demon religion has spent so much effort to condense these beads, yet Uncle Xiao has taken them all away. This matter will definitely cause a huge uproar in the heavenly demon religion. Jianshun was rather heavy-hearted. He could tell just how important this place was to the heavenly demon religion from the formations cast down here. Or in other words, just how important this place was to the Great Elder of the heavenly demon religion. If the Great Elder personally came to the Cloud Plane, the consequences would be unimaginable. Houston was about to leave after collecting the 9 beads of blood. However, his body stiffened slightly, and he raised his head to look at the sky. He stared at the huge swirl of Yin wind in the sky. After a moment of hesitation, he began to fly into the sky under the protection of the blood-red light from the Empyrean demon orb. Very soon, he was swallowed by the huge swirl of chilling wind. When he reappeared, there were 9 thumb-sized beads in his hand apart from the 9 thumb-sized beads. They were all jet-black beads. This black pearl contained an extremely powerful and incomparably pure soul power. Now, the 9 beads of blood and soul had all ended up in Houston's hands. At this moment, there was a flash, and the white-clothed Fairy Haoyue had already returned to Jianshin and the others. When she saw the 9 beads of blood and soul in Houston's hands, her eyes narrowed as well. She said with a heavy voice, "The heavenly demon religion will definitely alarm the true upper echelon now that they have lost the beads of blood and soul. It might even alarm the Great Elder. We can't stay here for long. We need to leave as soon as possible. The heavenly demon religion will probably make a huge move soon." At the same time, Houston understood the severity of the matter. After collecting the 9 beads of blood and soul, he immediately flew out. Just like how he entered, he made it out of the formation safely. However, passing through the formation was an extremely difficult matter for Houston. When he walked out of the formation, the terrifying killing intent that permeated the formation almost made him collapse. His face was pale. Fairy Hao Yue was stern. With a flip of her hand, the bright moon divine hall appeared. She said, "Enter the divine hall. We need to leave as soon as possible." Without any hesitation, Jianshin and the others immediately entered the bright moon divine hall. Fairy Hao Yue stowed the divine hall away and used her primordial realm laws to erase the presences and traces left behind by Jianshin and the others. She vanished in a flash, making her way out of the castle with lightning speed. Now, all the formations in the castle had been activated. Countless formations were connected, linking up with one another. As a result, the defenses of the castle were truly impregnable. Fairy Hao Yue was cold. Her eyes shone with a sharp light as she radiated with a terrifying presence. Under the layer of moonlight, she directly collided with the formations with the power of primordial realm laws. Boom! With her collision, the entire castle shook violently. Even though the killing formation before her had been fused with many other formations, it was still unable to endure Fairy Hao Yue's powerful strike. With a crack, it directly collapsed. However, Fairy Hao Yue did not slow down at all. She radiated with a surging presence as she rampaged through the various formations before her like a hot knife through butter. She quickly retreated from the castle. Even though the defenses of the castle were impregnable, there were no killing formations that could stop Fairy Hao Yue apart from the formations that protected the pool of blood. Even though all the formations in the castle were linked together, making them much more powerful, they were still unable to stop Fairy Hao Yue. At that moment, the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion that many infinite primes feared on the cloud plane, where they dared not approach at all, was like strolling through her own backyard in Fairy Hao Yue's eyes. They were unable to do anything to her at all. Boom! At this moment, a heavy sound that basically rang through the entire castle suddenly rang out. Fairy Hao Yue formed a seal and used an ability. She struck out with her full strength, piercing through the layers of formations and creating a hole in the castle. Afterwards, she flew out through the hole and vanished. At the same time, the three vice leaders of the branch of the heavenly demon religion on the cloud plane became bound by shackles condensed from moonlight force. They were unable to move at all. At this moment, the monstrous demonic aura around the three of them began to fluctuate intensely. Immediately, the three of them emitted a furious roar in unison. After using all of their strength, they finally shattered the restraints that were entangled around their bodies. Immediately, their bodies quietly disappeared from this place. When they appeared again, they had already arrived before the hole that Fairy Hao Yue had created. The three of them stared at the hole with ugly expressions. Their faces were extremely sunken. This ancient castle is a divine artifact with extremely powerful defense. Only chaotic primes can pierce through a divine artifact. Once all the formations in our headquarters are activated, even 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes won't be able to escape. However, these formations can't stop this person at all. Just who is this chaotic prime? Let's go to the Forbidden Grounds. The chaotic prime who broke into our headquarters has been in there for quite some time, said Jianshin. With that, the three of them vanished in a single instance. When they reappeared, they had arrived beside the pool of blood, standing outside the formation. Fortunately, the formation is fine. The Great Elder personally cast down the formation after all. Even if this person is a chaotic prime, they won't be able to get through it. The three of them all let out a sigh of relief when they saw that the formation was fine. They could ignore the fact that a chaotic prime had broken into their headquarters and killed many of their divine kings. They could even ignore the fact that the chaotic prime had pierced a hole in the castle. This was because they only needed to report this matter, and the higher-ups would naturally send people to deal with the chaotic prime. However, they could not allow anything to happen to the blood beads and soul beads in the Forbidden Grounds. However, when Huan instinctively looked towards the bottom of the pool of blood, his face suddenly froze. His face instantly paled while intense disbelief filled his face. He cried out, "The blood droplets! Why are the blood droplets gone?" The other two vice leaders were shocked when they heard that. They both looked at the pool of blood. With a single glance, both of their faces instantly turned incomparably pale, and they were almost scared out of their wits. "Oh no, the soul beads, the soul beads, the soul beads have disappeared as well." Ihuayue's trembling voice rang out. At that moment, the three vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion tottered slightly. They almost lost their footing as they became filled with fear. "What do we do? The blood beads and soul beads have disappeared. Where do we explain this to the higher-ups?" Chapter 1965. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plane, an extremely majestic divine hall stood there. It radiated with a terrifying pressure that could shake up the world. This divine temple seemed to be able to suppress a part of the sky. When it stood in this space, it seemed that even this independent, unknown space had to submit, crawling at the feet of this divine temple. At this moment, two streaks of light suddenly appeared in a silent, dark room at the very top of the divine hall. They tore through the darkness like two bolts of lightning, illuminating the dark room with a sliver of light. "Amagami. It's Amagami's presence. Ning Shuang, have you come to the saint's world?" In the pitch-black secret room, a trembling and excited voice suddenly rang out. The voice was filled with endless longing. The two streaks of light that had suddenly appeared were actually a pair of eyes that shone brightly. It was a person's gaze. With the help of these two divine lights, one could vaguely see a figure sitting cross-legged in this secret chamber. The stalwart figure seemed to give off a terrifying presence that could crush the sky as he sat there. "How many years has it been? How many years has it been? I've finally waited for this day. I've already set up everything in the saint's world. Ning Shuang, we'll meet again very soon." The voice filled with longing rang out again. 1,000,000 years of preparation, 1,000,000 years of hard work, 1,000,000 years of bitter waiting and anticipation were finally about to come true. Even though the owner of the voice had already cultivated a heart that would not waver even if the universe was destroyed, he could not help but tremble at that moment. He had been looking forward to this day for far, far too long. "Master, this old servant has something important to report." At this moment, an old voice suddenly rang out from outside the room. It was filled with respect. Outside the secret chamber, an old man in a black robe appeared silently. The old man's eyes were deep, and there seemed to be a vast and endless universe hidden in them. Even through his eyes, one could see the endless rules of the world interweaving. It was as if the great path was rumbling, and there seemed to be a vast and huge universe evolving. Moreover, traces of aura leaked out from this old man from time to time, enough to shake the heavens and the earth. The strength of this old man was extremely strong. However, at this moment, he bowed and stood respectfully outside the door of the secret room. His face was filled with respect. "Is it about the Yun State branch?" The voice in the secret chamber came out. "Exactly. Master, I've just received news that the 9 blood beads and soul beads at the branch on the cloud plane spent countless years condensing have been taken away by an unknown chaotic prime," the old man said politely. "I already know about this matter. You can leave now. The mission of the Cloud State branch has already been completed," said the person in the secret room. Hearing this, the old man was slightly startled. Then he bowed respectfully and said, "This old servant understands. This old servant will take his leave." As soon as his voice fell, the old man silently disappeared. The bright-eyed figure sat in the secret room and murmured again, "Since the Empyrean demon orb has appeared in the saint's world, they must have come as well. Sigh, it's a pity that my original body is still trapped. This clone can't go to the cloud plane." After the old man left, he directly arrived in a hall. 7 people had already been waiting there for quite some time. The 7 of them all possessed powerful presences. They were all experts who had reached the primordial realm. "Greetings to the Grand Elder." Upon seeing this old man, the 7 of them bowed in unison, their expressions filled with respect. Afterwards, one of them said, "Grand Elder, Through the images and descriptions from the three vice leaders of the branch on the cloud plane, I've already roughly figured out who the person who infiltrated the branch is. She should be the person who ranked third on the Divine King's throne several 100,000 years ago. Hao Yu is extremely powerful. It's said that she killed an infinite prime back when she was in the Divine King's realm. Now that she's even more powerful, if we seven elders face her, we probably won't be able to do anything to her even if we work together. The person who spoke was a beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s. She was naturally enchanting, and every single action she made radiated with fatal temptation. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared. As if it could crush the sky, it engulfed the entire hall with a terrifying sense of destruction. Aside from the Grand Elder, the expressions of the seven other powerful primordial realm experts changed as soon as the pressure appeared. Under the pressure, the seven of them felt their chests tighten as they struggled to breathe. It was as if the surrounding space was squeezing towards them. Grand Elder, do you want me to take action and capture the person who infiltrated the branch on the cloud plane? A deep voice echoed through the hall. It was cold and emotionless, chilling and terrifying. The Grand Elder stood there emotionlessly. It was impossible to tell what he was feeling. He said, "There's no need. The mission of the branch on the cloud plane has already been completed. Don't interfere too much, just in case you ruin Master's plans." Hearing this, the seven elders looked at each other and then accepted the order in unison. The frightening aura that enveloped the entire hall and seemed to be able to crush the heavens also disappeared following these words of the first elder. Princess Tai sat in her own residence within the imperial palace of the Shi Empire on the northern region of the cloud plane. She held an embroidered box in her hand as she studied it repeatedly. She was very curious. Just what is this Jianshan giving to my aunt and uncle? He's so mysterious, and he even said that they might like it. Princess Tyne muttered to herself. However, she did not open the box in the end. She said in frustration, "It's just a pity that Aunt and my parents still haven't returned after so many days. I wonder when I'll be able to hand this box to Aunt. And my aunt's temper is rather bad. Jianshan is a supreme overgod after all. My aunt and uncle should accept something he gives them." Princess Tyne felt rather uneasy. She looked at the box in her hand and felt uncertain. "Your Highness, the Emperor and Empress have returned." At this moment, a female attendant's voice rang out from outside. Princess Tyne's eyes lit up when she heard that. She stowed the box away in her space ring and immediately ran out. In the Shi dynasty, it was extremely difficult for many princes and princesses to meet the Emperor and Empress. As a matter of fact, some princes and princesses would never be able to speak to the Emperor or Empress in their entire lives. However, Princess Tyne was not one of them. Her status in the Shi dynasty was extremely special. She could meet the Emperor and Empress at any time. Chapter 1966. Princess Tyne bowed within a magnificent bedroom. She had a faint smile on her face. She was composed and casual, without any reservations at all. In front of her, a graceful and luxurious woman was standing behind screen. Her face couldn't be seen clearly at all, and only a vague figure could be seen. She was the Empress of a Shi dynasty. "So it's Sienna. I've just returned, yet you've come to visit me. You're quite well informed," the Empress said from behind the screen. She spoke kindly and gently. "Many things have happened in the Empire recently. I was afraid that Aunt's mood would be affected, so I've specially come to keep you company," said Princess Tyne. She was considerate, and at the same time, her voice was filled with concern. "Sigh." The Empress sighed gently as if something indescribably painful had affected her mood. At that moment, she became rather downcast. She said, "Sienna, come. Keep me company." "Yes, Aunt." Princess Tyne made her way over slowly and entered the screen. She sat down beside the Empress gracefully. "Oh, right, Aunt. An extremely stunning supreme overgod has appeared in our northern region while you were gone," Princess Tyne said. The light in her eyes shone as she carefully observed the Empress' expression. Only when she saw how the Empress did not react much did she continue. "Although this supreme overgod isn't from our northern region, He really is powerful. I think there's no one in the entire northern region who can rival this supreme overgod, because this supreme overgod has defeated the divine king as an overgod. And I've heard that this divine king is no ordinary divine king. He's a disciple of a large sect in the Xiandao dynasty. What's even more surprising is that this overgod was not injured at all after defeating the divine king. Aunt, do you think this overgod is powerful? The Empress' expression did not change at all. She nodded slowly. He's able to match the divine king as an overgod and defeat him. That's right. He really is a supreme overgod with astonishing potential. With his strength, he can even compete with the person who ranks first on the overgod's plaque. Even Aunt thinks so too. I also think that this supreme overgod has the right to compete for first place on the overgod's plaque. Princess Tyan smiled sweetly. She seemed to think of something and suddenly took out an embroidered box from her space ring. She said, "All right, Ani, when I visited this supreme overgod last time, the supreme overgod told me to give this embroidered box to Ani or to young master." Princess Tyan paused when she reached there. She stared at the box in her hand and said after some thought, "This must be the supreme overgod's gift to Aunt and the young master." Hearing this, the Empress frowned and said, "Siener, why do you keep everyone's things for me? It's not like you don't understand some principles. You should return this brocade box to someone else." The Empress' voice was dignified, leaving no room for doubt. Princess Tyan was rather troubled. As soon as she thought about how solemn Jianshun was when he passed the box to her, she understood that the item inside would definitely be anything but simple. However, she understood the Empress' temper extremely well. Since the Empress was unwilling to accept the box, it would be useless no matter what she did in the end. "Yes, Aunt. Sien understands." Princess Tyan was rather gloomy. She accepted the box in her hand unhappily and left the Empress' residence before long. However, Princess Tyan did not forget about Jianshun's orders. She only needed to give the box to the Empress or Emperor Shi. Since it did not work with the Empress, she went to find the Shi Emperor. With Princess Tyan's identity and status, meeting Emperor Shi was naturally no problem at all. Very soon, she arrived in Emperor Shi's study. When Princess Tyan saw the Emperor who possessed supreme status in the Shi dynasty, the ruler who was renowned in the northern region and had turned the Shi dynasty upside down ever since he became emperor, he sat on a precious throne carved from crystal. He held his forehead with one hand as he rested with his eyes closed. However, on his resolute and dignified face, there was a deep exhaustion. So it's you. Why are you looking for Uncle?" Emperor Shi asked. His voice was filled with gentleness. He did not move at all from his throne. He did not even open his eyes. At that moment, Emperor Shi did not possess his usual coldness. He did not possess his usual awe-inspiring presence. He only seemed like a lonely and sorrowful figure. "Uncle." Princess Tyan looked at Emperor Shi's exhausted figure and hesitated. Originally, she wanted to give the box to her uncle, but she found it rather difficult to do so when she saw how exhausted he was. Uncle has always been worried about his long-lost daughter. He's already exhausted. Now that he finally has a chance to rest, do I really have to disturb him like this? Princess Tyan thought. In the end, she sighed inside and did not choose to take out the box at a time like this. Within the Tianyuan family in the Dong, and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region of the Cloud Plain, Fairy Hao Yue and Jianshun's group had all returned to the clan. When they left, they did not raise any suspicions, and when they returned, they did so silently as well. Without the 9 blood beads and soul beads, the heavenly demon religion will probably cause a great disturbance. You have to be careful. Don't let any traces leak out, or no one will be able to save you. Fairy Hao Yue personally cast down a barrier in a secret room deep underground as she spoke extremely sternly. At this moment, Amagami suddenly floated out from Houston's sea of consciousness. She shone with dazzling red light, and in the next moment, 10 thumb-sized beads flew out from Amagami. The 10 beads were 5 soul beads and 5 blood beads. They floated before Jianshun, Houston, Shun Jian, see you, and Fairy How Yue. Amagami's artifact spirit has messaged me, saying that these blood beads and soul beads are a gift to everyone. Thank you for your assistance. Houston opened his mouth and conveyed the artifact spirit's message. Although these soul orbs and blood orbs are formed from the blood and soul energy of countless living beings, because the blood orbs and soul orbs have been refined by the great array for many years, they have long since transformed into the purest crystals. Therefore, absorbing the energy and soul energy inside will not leave behind any hidden dangers. Fairy How Yue studied the blood beads and soul beads seriously. She nodded. That's right. The formation has refined the blood beads and soul beads for many years, so the malice and unstable factors within them have been purged long ago. As a result, the blood beads and soul beads have become great nourishment. They can increase your strength by quite a lot. As she said that, Fairy How Yue glanced at Jinshin. With a wave of her hand, she sent the blood beads and soul beads to Jinshin. She said, "These blood beads and soul beads are useless to me now. Take them." Chapter 1967. Looking at the blood beads and soul beads, Shun Jian and Siyu were also hesitant. Like Jinshin, they didn't accept the blood beads and soul beads. After a while, Shun Jian said, "Although I'm not a righteous person, I'm also not part of the demonic path. The heavenly demon religion slaughters tens of thousands of lives and uses countless lives to condense these 9 blood beads and soul beads. Although these blood beads and soul beads can greatly increase one's cultivation, if I were to use them, then what difference would there be between me, Shun Jian, and the people of the demonic path?" As he spoke, Shun Jian handed the 2 blood beads and soul beads floating in front of him to Houston. With a solemn expression, he said, "Houston, these things aren't suitable for me to use. However, you practice the demonic path cultivation method, so there shouldn't be any taboos in this aspect. Thus, consider these blood beads and soul beads as a gift from me." Shun Jian's words were resolute and decisive. Although these blood beads and soul beads could greatly increase one's cultivation, they didn't seem to be tempting to Shun Jian at all. Shun Jian is right. These blood beads and soul beads are indeed not suitable for us. After all, we're not people of the demonic path. The cultivation method that we practice is also not a demonic path cultivation method. If we were to use these products condensed from the blood and soul beads of countless lives to cultivate, it would affect our state of mind. In serious cases, it could even create inner demons that would affect our future cultivation. Jinshin also handed the blood beads and soul beads to Houston. Although the blood beads and soul beads have been refined by the great array and all the evil chi and unstable impurities have been removed, their formation was truly too cruel. Jinshin had his own principles. If these blood beads and soul beads were taken from the bodies of demonic beasts or various ominous beasts, then he naturally wouldn't reject them. After all, his ideology had already been formed. However, these blood beads and soul beads weren't taken from the bodies of demonic beasts. Thus, he couldn't accept them in his heart. "I don't need them either, Uncle Shio. You can take them for yourself," Siyu also said and returned the blood bead and soul bead to Houston. Houston looked at the 4 blood beads and soul beads floating in front of him. After a short hesitation, he said, "Well, since you don't need them, I won't be unreasonable. I'll accept them on behalf of Amagami. They're very useful to Amagami. Why would a divine weapon need these things?" Fairy How Yue stared at Houston and said unhurriedly. Houston shook his head and said, "Actually, I'm also very curious about this. During this trip to the heavenly demon religion, Amagami has given me too many surprises." Fairy How Yue stared at Houston deeply and said, "Your Amagami probably isn't as simple as she seems on the surface. I'd advise you to use less of this god artifact. If it's possible, it's best if you abandon it, just in case you end up doomed in the future." Houston immediately became stern. He knew that Fairy How Yue was a terrifyingly powerful primordial realm expert, so she definitely would not say something like that for no reason. Afterwards, Fairy Haoyue looked at Jianshun and said, I'm going to leave. The upper echelon of the heavenly demon religion will definitely be alarmed by something like this. If I stay, I'll only cause trouble for you. Be careful. A sliver of hesitation appeared on Fairy Haoyue's face when she reached there. After a while, she said to Jianshan secretly, I suspect that Amagami is connected to the heavenly demon religion in some way. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Jianshan nodded slightly to express that he understood. In reality, he had the same suspicions as well. After all, the formations that protected the blood and soul beads were so powerful that even chaotic primes would have a slim chance of survival if they entered them. Yet, the Empyrean demon orb was able to move about freely in such a terrifying formation. This did not make sense. If Amagami was a god artifact that specialized in countering formations, it would make sense. However, Jianxun had learnt from the sword spirits that Amagami was the famed treasure of the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the celestial demon saint. It possessed both offensive and defensive abilities, and there were no rumors that it could ignore formations. As a result, this could only mean that the formation in the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion had been specially set up to be ineffective against Amagami or a certain cultivation method. However, what Jianshun could not understand was why Amagami and the heavenly demon religion were connected. One was in the demon's world, while the other was in the saint's world. Jianshun did not think too much about the similarity in name. There were countless people with the same name. It was just far too common. After a simple farewell, Fairy Haoyue silently vanished from the room. In the secret room, Jianshun asked about his doubts about how the heavenly demon religion could pass through formations. Unfortunately, Houston was completely clueless about this, as all of this was done by Amagami's artifact spirit. However, when Houston asked the artifact spirit, Amagami's artifact spirit told him that it had seen such a formation before and knew how to break through it. Clearly, no one believed this answer because Houston and the artifact spirit had not attempted to break through the formation at all. Instead, they had just swaggered through the formation in a straight line. Amagami's artifact spirit is hiding a secret from us, Jinshin thought. Afterwards, he took out a space ring and passed it to Houston. He said sternly, Uncle Shio, the blood beads and soul beads are on you. It's no longer safe for you to remain here. There are some divine crystals in here. You need to hurry to the Heavenly Moon Empire as soon as possible. Then use the teleportation formation there to go to the Blood Sun Empire. Afterwards, use the teleportation formation in the Blood Sun Empire to go to the Central Region. The Central Region is much more powerful than the 4 major regions. You'll be much safer there. You can use this opportunity to increase your strength. Houston understood the severity of the matter as well, so he did not turn it down. After bidding farewell to everyone, he immediately left the Tianyuan family. He had obtained the blood beads and soul beads, so his priority was to increase his strength as soon as possible. Now that the heavenly demon religion had lost their treasures, it was extremely likely that even more terrifying experts would come. The senses of the soul of a primordial realm expert were terrifying. No matter how well he hid in the southern region, he would not be able to escape from a primordial realm expert's thorough search. Once the blood beads and soul beads were exposed, the consequences would be unthinkable. After Houston left through the teleportation formation in the Tianyuan family's forbidden grounds, Jianshun, Shunjian, and Siyu immediately hurried to the front lines in order to avoid suspicion. Now, the ceasefire of half a month had just come to an end. The divine kingdom of Pingtian had gathered their army once again. They stood guard in the fortress that they had just built, waiting sternly. Several dozen kilometers away from the fortress were the soldiers of the 3 armies of the heavenly demon religion. They gathered there. Endless demonic aura formed thick, black clouds, causing the world they resided in to become completely dark. Many divine kings from the divine kingdom of Pingtian had gathered on the fortress. However, when they discovered Jianshin, their attitudes all changed drastically. They all greeted Jianshin with a smile. Jianshin looked over and discovered a few unfamiliar faces among the divine kings. After a simple introduction, He learned that they were all reinforcements from the empires of the southern region. However, Jianshun was rather perplexed by their friendliness. Even if they knew he had a primordial realm expert behind him, there was no need for them to be so courteous. Jianshun, I never thought you'd actually defeat a divine king in the northern region. How shocking. A person from the divine kingdom of Pingtian personally made his way over and smiled at Jianshun. Jianshun only understood when he heard that. The news of him defeating a divine king in the northern region had already reached the southern region. Look over there. The heavenly demon religion seems to have retreated. At this moment, a divine king on the fortress cried out in surprise. Everyone immediately shifted their attention away from Jianshun. They all stared ahead, towards the base of the three armies of the heavenly demon religion. With their eyesight, they were naturally able to clearly see everything that was happening dozens of miles away in this open space. Chapter 1968. The sudden retreat of the heavenly demon religion confused the divine king who stood on the walls of the fortress. After half a month of preparation, they had already prepared themselves for a long battle against the heavenly demon religion. However, just when the ceasefire between the divine kingdom of Pingtian and vice leader Huai and had ended and the battle was about to erupt again, the heavenly demon religion that had gained the upper hand suddenly retreated. This unexpected action left the divine king on the walls rather confused. They had no idea what was going on. Even the divine king stared at the army of the heavenly demon religion that had already retreated into the distance. He was filled with doubt and confusion. They've retreated? The heavenly demon religion has retreated just like that? Don't tell me they're plotting something? A divine king on the walls said. He found this rather hard to believe. The old man understood the heavenly demon religion's way of doing things extremely well. The heavenly demon religion is tyrannical on the cloud plane just because they have the support of a great elder. They can destroy anyone they want. However, due to the great elder behind the heavenly demon religion, none of the peak organizations on the cloud plane dared to lay their hands on the heavenly demon religion. As a result, the heavenly demon religion has caused great bloodshed on the cloud plane time and time again in the past several tens of thousand years. They've committed heinous crimes. In particular, the Empyrean demon cult had sent out an unprecedented number of people for the attack this time. Not only had they mobilized all 9 armies to attack the 3 regions, but even their vice leaders have been mobilized as well. This was an extremely rare sight. They have adopted this attitude of not giving up until they achieve their goal. It is absolutely impossible for them to withdraw their troops so easily. The one who spoke was an old man who held a fly whisk in his hand. He had the demeanor of a transcendent being. That's right. The heavenly demon religion's withdrawal is definitely not as simple as it seems on the surface. We can't let our guard down, another divine king said. The divine king on the fortress expressed his own opinions and guesses, but without exception, no one believed that the heavenly demon religion had really retreated. Even the divine king was no exception. This was because the heavenly demon religion was used to being domineering, adding on the fact that they had brought such a large force this time. According to their style of doing things, it was absolutely impossible for them to give up on their own accord unless they set off a monstrous massacre that could shake the entire cloud region. Among these people, only Jianshun, Shan Jian, and Siyu knew that the heavenly demon religion's withdrawal wasn't because they had other motives or were plotting something. They were truly withdrawing. However, Jianshun had no idea how long the 9 armies would last. He had learned the secret behind the heavenly demon religion's war from his visit to the heavenly demon religion. Now that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the heavenly demon religion had spent so much time and effort to refine had been stolen, there were only 2 things they could do. One was to give up on the war and focus all their efforts on searching for the blood beads and soul beads. The other was to continue the war and refine the blood beads and soul beads again. I hope Uncle Xiao is safe in the central region. It's just a pity that we don't have enough 5-color divine crystals on us, or we would have directly gotten Uncle Xiao to leave the cloud plane and go to other planes. That would have been safer, thought Jianshun. He could only pray for Uncle Xiao right now. There was nothing he could do to help. Just as everyone discussed the heavenly demon religion's withdrawal, a shocking piece of news arrived. The people from the heavenly demon religion had invaded the divine kingdoms in the surroundings and massacred them. They began a boundless slaughter once again, causing rivers of blood to flow in many cities and provincial cities. No one was spared wherever they passed by. Even the imperial cities of a few divine kingdoms suffered. They were completely wiped out by the heavenly demon religion, and the divine king experts who watched over them were surrounded and killed by the protectors of the heavenly demon religion. In the end, 3 of the neighboring divine kingdoms were destroyed, while the other divine kingdoms suffered varying degrees of damage as well. They were all heavily injured. The divine king experts on the city walls were all furious when they heard the news. The divine king sighed gently. There was some helplessness on his face, but he said nothing. The light in Jinshan's eyes flickered. He thought to himself, in terms of time, when the heavenly demon religion attacked these divine kingdoms, it just happened to be when Fairy Haoyue infiltrated the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. Clearly, they want to collect more soul energy to increase the quality of their blood and soul orbs. They shouldn't be trying to refine them. In the following period of time, the Allied army continued to remain on high alert. They remained in the fortress at all times. Only half a month later did a divine king venture within 10,000 kilometers of the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. Only after receiving accurate information did everyone believe that the heavenly demon religion had truly retreated. The divine king and the many divine kings who had come as reinforcements all let out a sigh of relief after receiving accurate information. The divine king immediately clasped his fist at everyone. His face was amiable, but his dignity did not diminish at all. He said, "Everyone, it looks like the war this time has truly come to an end. I would like to thank everyone for your assistance. Your Majesty is far too polite. The heavenly demon religion is vicious. We should all work together against such a vicious demonic cult." An old man clasped his fist at the divine king. An old man clasped his fist at the divine king. He spoke extremely politely. He was an elder of the Earth Spirit sect. Of course, he was not one of the 3 elders who had come to the divine kingdom of Pingtian first. Instead, he was one of the divine kings who had come as reinforcements. Afterwards, the elder looked at Jinshan and said apologetically, "Little brother Jinshan, I hope you don't take offense to the incompetent disciples of our Earth Spirit sect." The old man sighed gently when he reached there. "It's a pity that many of the disciples have already died on the battlefield, or my Earth Spirit sect would definitely punish them severely and give little brother Jinshan an explanation." The divine kings on the fortress all looked at Jinshan and the elder of the Earth Spirit sect. They had all heard about the grievances between Jinshan and the Earth Spirit sect. If Jinshan was only a supreme overgod who had barely managed to make it onto the overgod's plaque, the Earth Spirit sect would not take him seriously with their strength, but they would not take him seriously. However, if he was a supreme overgod who possessed startling strength and had the right to rank first on the overgod's plaque, the significance would be completely different. This was because an overgod like that could rival the divine king. If they broke through in the future and reached the level of divine king, they would have the right to become a divine king. It was rumored that the top 10 of the divine king possessed extremely astonishing strength, enough to fend off early primordial realm experts. They could even kill regular primordial realm experts with the power of the divine king. Moreover, Yashilian had revealed that Jinshan possessed the support of a primordial realm expert. The Earth Spirit sect naturally did not want to offend someone like that. Under the attention of all the organizations, Jinshan remained emotionless. He said, "This matter has nothing to do with the dead disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. The true culprit is someone else. Divine King level talismans are so precious that they can't be possessed by just a few disciples." The elder's face immediately stiffened when he heard that. He sighed gently and said nothing more. After bidding farewell to the Divine King, he left with the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. He knew that the grievances between the Earth Spirit sect and Jinshan could not be settled with just a few words. It was best to leave it to the sect master and the others to deal with. Now that the battle against the heavenly demon religion had ended, the divine kings all dispersed, returning to where they had come from. The divine king arrived before Jianshun and said, Jianshun, I'll deal with the matters of the battle first. In 3 days, I'll go to the Earth Spirit sect with you. A few people from the Earth Spirit sect disregarded the bigger picture and attacked their own people on the battlefield. We must get them to give us an explanation for this. Towards the end, the divine king's voice became rather stern as a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Chapter 1969. With the battle over, Jianshun, Shunjian, and Siyu returned to the provincial city with the people from the Dong and province. Shunjian did not stay for long. On the day he returned to the provincial city, he bid farewell to Jianshun and the others before setting off on his own. He went in search of the call that had come from afar. As for Xiongzhong, Cheng Jingyun, and the others from the world of Forsaken Saints, they remained with the Tianyuan family. They were still too weak right now. If they went with their Spirit King, not only would they not be of any help, but they would become a burden instead. After all, Shun Jian wanted to leave the cloud plane this time. He wanted to cross through space and go to places beyond the cloud plane. Danger was everywhere. Jianshun adjusted his condition in the Tianyuan family as he waited for the trip to the Earth Spirit sect in 3 days. At the same time, the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult who watched over the cloud plane shrouded in dense demonic aura within a dark, secret room in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. They gave off terrifying presences that were as vast as the ocean, causing the air in the room to seem to freeze. What are the higher-ups thinking? The blood and soul beads at our branch spent so much time condensing with the help of the formations personally cast down by the Great Elder have been stolen, yet the Grand Elder hasn't reacted at all. Not only has he not sent chaotic primes to hunt down the person who stole the blood and soul beads, but he hasn't even searched for the blood and soul beads. He's completely indifferent towards the theft of the blood and soul beads. Hasn't all our efforts over the years been wasted? Huan said. His face was obscured, but his voice was filled with doubt and confusion. Huan, this isn't something we can interfere with. It's best if you talk less about the higher-ups. If your voice reaches the Grand Elder's ears, he'll probably become displeased, Yi Huanyue said indifferently. Then she looked at the 3rd vice leader and said, Elder son, a few days ago, Yashi Lian was also captured by an unknown infinite prime. According to Yashi Lian's description of the primordial realm expert, do you think the primordial realm expert who broke into our branch and stole the blood beads and soul beads is the same person who captured Yashi Lian? The vice leader referred to as Elder Son fell silent for a while before replying with his old voice. Yashi Lian said that the primordial realm expert who captured her used laws with the light of the moon, making them as bright as the moon. The infinite prime who broke into our headquarters also used laws that were as bright as the moon. In my opinion, they're probably the same person. Since they're the same person, it'll be much easier. According to my knowledge, the infinite prime seems to be connected to a person called Jianxin from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Yi Huanyue said mysteriously. Jianxin? It's Jianxin again. Huan's cold voice rang out. As soon as he mentioned Jianxin, uncontainable killing intent filled his heart. He said, not only is this Jianxin openly opposing me and protecting Duanmu's successor's clan, but it's also because of him that I was forced to sign a ceasefire with the Divine King for half a month. I even suspect that the Infinite Prime who stole the blood and soul beads from our heavenly demon religion has something to do with Jianxin as well. This person can't be left alive. Huan paused before continuing. We only managed to refine the blood and soul beads after a very long time, a tremendous effort. We have to find them, or we won't be able to answer to the Great Elder. Since Jianxin is the key to this matter, I'll start with him, Huan said with heavy killing intent. The blood and soul beads have been stolen. Since the higher-ups aren't looking into it, there's something fishy about this matter. There's probably something we don't know about. Huan, I think it's best if you don't act recklessly, Elder Son reminded him kindly. He and Yi Huayue were both unwilling to accept the loss of the blood and soul beads. This was because every single one of the 18 tiny beads contained their blood, sweat, and tears. They had put in so much effort to refine every single one of them, even though they knew that the great elder needed the blood and soul beads, and that they would not be able to obtain a single one of them even after they were condensed. It still represented their contributions and efforts. However, both he and Yi Huayue could tell that there was probably something else behind this matter. It was not as simple as it seemed on the surface, so the two of them did not dare to act recklessly. The blood beads and soul beads were protected by formations personally cast down by the Great Elder. Chaotic primes could destroy the castle, but they could not destroy the formations that protected the blood beads and soul beads at all. However, the blood beads and soul beads had been stolen while the formations were still intact. They could not guarantee that this was not purposefully arranged by the higher-ups, or that there was some scheme that they did not know about. The light in Huai's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, he nodded slowly. I understand the severity of this matter. The Blood Sun Empire was located in the center of the southern region. It was the only eternal empire in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. It was surrounded by 6 ancient empires, as well as countless divine kingdoms of various sizes. With a heavy creak, the heavy door to a secret room slowly opened in the depths of a resplendent hall within the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire. A middle-aged man in a purple gold robe with a dignified bearing was standing in front of the door with his hands behind his back. When the door of the secret room rose to the highest point and stopped, the middle-aged man walked out unhurriedly. Greetings to the 9th Prince. 3 middle-aged men had already stood politely outside the secret room. They had been waiting for quite some time now. They all bowed towards the middle-aged man who had emerged from the secret room. The middle-aged man who had just emerged from a secret room in violet robes was the 9th Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Even though there were over a dozen princes in the Blood Sun Empire, the number of people who were truly outstanding and qualified to become the next emperor could only be counted on one hand. Not only was the 9th Prince the most outstanding and dazzling of them all, but he was also the person that the current emperor valued the most. There were even rumors that once the current emperor of the Blood Sun Empire abdicated, the 9th Prince would definitely become the next emperor. As a result, basically no one among the princes of the Blood Sun Empire could match up to the 9th Prince's current authority. The 9th Prince stood before the 3 of them emotionlessly and said in an authoritative tone, "The 3 of you, go to the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair near the Heavenly Moon Empire and retrieve the Flower of Ways I've been cultivating there." After so many years of preparation, the 9th Prince had already reached the peak of the Divine King. He was only a step away from the primordial realm. This step seemed close, but it was actually as far away as the horizon. It would not be easy to cross it. No matter how astonishing the 9th Prince's talent was, it would take him a very long time to break through the Divine King and reach the primordial realm through his own abilities. The Flower of Ways was the only heavenly resource that could allow him to break through his current bottleneck and reach the primordial realm in the shortest amount of time possible. As soon as the Flower of Ways was mentioned, the expressions of the 3 divine king changed. They looked at one another, and their faces were filled with bitterness. The 9th Prince frowned and said sternly, "Has something happened to the Flower of Ways?" The 3 middle-aged men who were also divine king hesitated slightly before one of them finally mustered up the courage to say, "9th Prince, a primordial realm expert has taken the Flower of Ways." The 9th Prince's eyes immediately shone with a shocking light when he heard that. A tremendous presence radiated from him like a flash flood. It was extremely terrifying. They were all divine king experts, but the 3 middle-aged men retreated time and time again before the 9th Prince's presence. They felt like mountains were crushing down on them. "Let's go to the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair," the 9th Prince said emotionlessly. The Earth Spirit sect was one of the 2 peak sects in the Heavenly Moon Empire. It possessed an extremely great status within the Heavenly Moon Empire. Even the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire treated the Earth Spirit sect with respect. The Earth Spirit sect occupied the 3,000 spiritual mountains with the densest origin energy in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They used the 3,000 spiritual mountains as the core of the formation and cast down a tremendous protective formation. The formation was so powerful that even regular primordial realm experts would struggle to shake it. Today just happened to be the Earth Spirit Sect's once-a-century disciple recruitment ceremony. The small path leading to the Earth Spirit Sect was already filled with people. Many young people lined up in an orderly manner, undergoing the various tests set up by the Earth Spirit Sect in an orderly fashion. They wanted to join the Earth Spirit Sect and become a disciple so that they could bring honor to their ancestors. There was no lack of people from large clans that possessed some status in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They either rode tamed flying beasts that were not weak or sat in luxurious carriages. As a result, there were all sorts of luxurious carriages parked outside the entrance of the Earth Spirit Sect, as well as numerous colossal beasts that gave off powerful presences. However, without any exception, no one dared to fly within 1,000 kilometers of the Earth Spirit Sect. They all traveled close to the ground. At this moment, a golden streak of light suddenly appeared. It directly flew through the air, directly heading towards the Earth Spirit Sect. In the previous moment, it was still far away, but in the next moment, it crossed the huge distance and appeared outside the Earth Spirit Sect. It did not land on the ground. Instead, it just hovered in the air, standing at the same height as the tallest mountain in the Earth Spirit Sect. At a closer look, this was a golden carriage. It was powered by 9 strange beasts, and every single one of them was extremely powerful. They all possessed the cultivation of overgods. Who's the person in the carriage? He's actually so impressive. He's actually bold enough to hover in the air before the Earth Spirit Sect. That's the same height as the tallest mountain in the Earth Spirit Sect. How bold of him! Does he know that his actions are a form of provocation to the Earth Spirit Sect? People who are bold enough to do this either know the rules of the Earth Spirit Sect or are extremely impressive experts. However, even the emperors of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds wouldn't dare to fly so high. That's the height of the mountain where the ancestor of the Earth Spirit Sect sits. For a moment, everyone outside the Earth Spirit Sect looked at the golden carriage in the air as they discussed among themselves. However, when the Earth Spirit Sect elder in charge of the recruitment ceremony saw the carriage in the sky, not only did he not go up to stop it, but his eyes narrowed instead as his face instantly became stern. He had already recognized the origins of the carriage. As the owner of the carriage, he did indeed possess the right to do something like this. At this moment, the protective formation of the Earth Spirit Sect shook, and the entrance to the Earth Spirit Sect was completely opened. Only when the Earth Spirit Sect was welcoming a person of great status would they do something like this. So, it's the Divine King of the Pingtian. Your arrival really brings light to my Earth Spirit Sect. Please come in, Divine King. With a clear laugh, the current sect master of the Earth Spirit Sect flew out with over a dozen elders. Every single one of them was filled with enthusiasm. In the past, the Earth Spirit Sect would never have welcomed the Divine King with such a great array before he had broken through to the primordial realm. Chapter 1970. What? The person in the carriage is actually the Divine King. It's said that the Divine King has already broken through to the primordial realm, becoming an infinite prime. He's on the same level as the ancestor of the Earth Spirit Sect. So it's the Divine King. I knew it. Who would be bold enough to not only enter the territory of the Earth Spirit Sect, but they're even flying in the sky. Moreover, they're flying at the same height as the tallest mountain in the Earth Spirit Sect. Heavens, is there really a primordial realm expert in the golden carriage in the sky? That's a legendary figure. Many people won't even be able to see one in their entire lives. As the sect master's voice boomed through the surroundings, the countless young people who had come to join the Earth Spirit Sect and the seniors who had escorted them heard it clearly. Immediately, a great discussion broke out among the crowd. At that moment, the eyes of countless people lit up when they looked at the golden carriage. They were filled with excitement, envy, reverence, and admiration. The primordial realm was a legendary figure to many of them. With their statuses, they did not even have the right to see an expert like that. The Divine King's carriage was received warmly by the elders, personally led by the sect master. It drove through the entrance of the Earth Spirit sect, disappearing before everyone's eyes. At the very center of the 3,000 spiritual mountains of the Earth Spirit sect, there was a huge mountain peak that had been forcefully cut in half. The Divine King's golden carriage slowly came to a stop. As the door opened, the white-robed Jianshun and the Divine King in his dragon robes emerged. The sect master of the Earth Spirit sect was a scholarly, middle-aged man. Right now, he was smiling from ear to ear. Just when he was about to speak, the light in the surroundings suddenly became extraordinarily bright. It was as if a huge sun hung in the Earth Spirit sect, causing the light there to be 2 or 3 times brighter than outside. Jianshun seemed to sense something. He looked over and saw a ruddy old man in the distance. He shone with dazzling light, as if there was a sun around him. He flew over from afar, and the light he gave off was so powerful that it completely outshone the sun in the sky, causing the surroundings to dim. Jianshun's eyes suddenly narrowed the moment he saw the old man. Even though the old man only shone with dazzling light, he did not give off any presence at all. As a result, he seemed like an ordinary person. However, Jianshun could tell with a single glance that the old man's strength had surpassed the Divine King. He had reached the primordial realm. When the sect master and the elders sensed the old man's arrival, they immediately became respectful. They all bowed towards the old man. Greetings to the ancestor. The ancestor moved extremely quickly. With just a single step, he crossed a huge distance and appeared before Jianshun and the Divine King. He glanced past Jianshun casually before directly looking at the Divine King. However, his casual glance made Jianshun's heart thump violently. At that moment, he actually felt like he was suffocating, and he even lost control over his body. The primordial realm really is powerful. Before an expert like that, I really am an ant, thought Jianshun. He had seen many primordial realm experts in the past. Let alone the Divine King and Hawaiian, he had seen several primordial realm experts in the northern region alone. There was even an even more terrifying chaotic prime. However, none of these primordial realm experts had purposefully released their presences, so Jianshun was unable to sense them too deeply. However, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect had released his primordial realm aura as soon as he saw Jianshun. Even though it was only for a split second, it was enough for Jianshun to sense the power of the primordial realm. Ping Tian, congratulations on reaching this level of cultivation. I believe a 7th ancient empire will appear in our southern region before long. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect clasped his fist at the Divine King before inviting him into the hall. Everyone took their seats in the hall. As expected, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect and the Divine King sat in the same position. There was no difference between them. Saying 2, let's cut to the chase. You should know why I've come this time. The Divine King directly cut to the chase as soon as he sat down. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect remained silent. He said nothing. Your Majesty, what happened on the battlefield was indeed the fault of the disciples of our Earth Spirit sect. Our Earth Spirit sect is willing to make up for the injuries Brother Jianshun suffered. Moreover, even the protector who used the Divine King level talisman to launch a sneak attack on Brother Jianshun has been expelled from our sect. From today onwards, she is no longer a disciple of our Earth Spirit sect. May I ask if Brother Jianshun and your Majesty are satisfied with this? Said the ancestor. The Divine King looked at Jianshun. Clearly, he was asking for Jianshun's opinion. Jianshun sneered. How precious is a Divine King level talisman? How can it end up in the hands of an overgod so easily? Moreover, it's not even a powerful overgod. As a result, the true culprits aren't the protectors. Instead, it's the elders who ordered them to do this. The sect master became stern when he heard that. He asked sternly, Brother Jianshun, may I ask if you have any evidence to prove that the people behind this are elders of our Earth Spirit sect? If you jump to conclusions just from a Divine King level talisman, I'm afraid you're being a little too hasty. Hasty? I don't find it hasty at all. Instead, I find Jianshun's words reasonable, the Divine King said firmly. The sect master's expression changed again and again. Once the matter was related to an elder's mission, it would become rather troublesome to deal with. If there were some protectors who were overgods, their Earth Spirit sect could give up on a few of them. However, the Divine King level experts were the pillars of the Earth Spirit sect. Losing even one of them would affect the sect's strength. The elders of the Earth Spirit sect who sat in the hall all became stern. "Bring me Mu-Ku." At this moment, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect suddenly said. He remained indifferent. Mu-Ku was one of the elders of the Earth Spirit sect, as well as the master of the 7 protectors who had caused trouble in the Dong and province. The sect master's face immediately changed. After hesitating slightly, he sent someone to invite Elder Mu over in the end. Very soon, Elder Mu entered the hall. After bowing towards the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, he stood there with a sunken face. "Jianshun, the culprit you speak of, the master of the protectors, is here. Do you plan on doing it yourself? Or do you plan on getting Ping Tian to do it for you?" The ancestor said indifferently. "Ancestor, we still haven't investigated this matter," the sect master said with a sliver of urgency. This was an elder of the Divine King. He could not hand him over so easily. Chapter 1971. "If that's the case, I'll be taking this person back," said the Divine King. He was decisive, immediately taking action to capture Mu-Ku. However, just when the Divine King was about to take action, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect suddenly said, "Ping Tian, don't you think it's beneath you to take action against the Divine King as a primordial realm expert?" The Divine King frowned when he heard that. He said emotionlessly, saying too, "What do you mean by that? Do you want Jianxin to take on a Divine King as an overgod?" It's rumored that although Jianxin hasn't attempted the overgod's plaque, he's so powerful that he can take on the supreme overgods who rank first on the overgod's plaque. Moreover, not long ago, he had even defeated a god king in the northern region. As a result, it'll be rather fair if Jianxin fights Mu-Ku, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said calmly. Then he looked at the Divine King and continued, "Although Mu-Ku is a Divine King, he's only an early Divine King, and he's not a Divine King. As a result, if you take action, it'll be beneath you." Mu-Ku, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, looked at Mu-Ku. He gave off an unquestionable sense of dignity. "Ancestor." Elder Mu-Ku bowed politely. "Mu-Ku, in the battle between the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian and the Heavenly Demon Religion, your disciples disregarded the bigger picture and attacked people from their alliance regardless of the situation. As their master, you don't restrain your disciples properly, allowing them to commit such a great mistake. You can't just resign. You need to give Jianxin an explanation for this," said the ancestor. "Yes, ancestor," Mu-Ku replied politely. He dared not disobey at all. "Jianxin, the explanation I'll give you is for you to fight Mu-Ku to the death. What do you think?" the ancestor said to Jianxin. Jianxin stood up and stared at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect with shining eyes. Not only was there no fear on his face, but there was even some sharpness instead. He said coldly, "Since that's the case, let me see just how powerful your Earth Spirit sect's Divine King is." Jianxin glared fiercely at Elder Mu-Ku. A powerful sword intent radiated from his body as he coldly said, "Mu-Ku, come out and fight." Sharpness filled Elder Mu's eyes as well. He said, "Old man would also like to see the supreme prodigy who is rumored to be ranked first on the Overgod's plaque. I want to see if he's really as powerful as the rumors say, where he can defeat the Divine King as an overgod." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Mu-Ku walked out of the hall. "Mu-Ku, you can only lose this battle. You can't win." However, at this moment, the ancestor's voice rang out in Mu-Ku's head secretly. The voice came from an infinite prime who had reached the Divine King many years ago. Even the Divine King was unable to hear what it said, let alone the other Divine King elders. Therefore, Mu-Ku was the only one who could clearly hear the voice transmission. Elder Mu-Ku's body immediately stiffened. His expression rapidly changed a few times before it returned to normal. He felt a wave of sadness in his heart. There were many rings of various sizes in the Earth Spirit sect. They were specially for the disciples to spar with. At this moment, Jianshan and Elder Mu Ku faced one another on the largest ring. The entire ring was enveloped by a barrier personally cast down by the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The barrier was so powerful that it was difficult for the Divine King to get through. It could easily endure the shockwaves from the battle inside. Basically, all the elders of the Earth Spirit sect had gathered around the ring. Even the elders who were in seclusion emerged and came to watch the battle. If it were a battle between a Divine King and a Divine King, the elders would not have paid so much attention to it. However, a battle between a supreme overgod who could contend for first place on the overgod's plaque and a Divine King was enough to attract the attention of many Divine Kings. As a matter of fact, even primordial realm experts would pay some attention. Muku's face was extremely sunken as he stood on the stage. The message from the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect still echoed in his head. A single sentence from the ancestor had directly ended his life, filling him with despair. I really never would have thought that not only did I fail to kill Jianshan when I ordered my disciples to attack Jianshan back then, but I ended up doomed instead. I was mercilessly abandoned by the sect. Our disciples were humiliated. Isn't our Earth Spirit sect losing face? Old Man's actions were completely for the sake of saving the Earth Spirit sect's face. He didn't want others to use the name of the Earth Spirit sect to make a name for themselves. However, he ended up sending himself to his grave in the end. Elder Mu Ku sighed inside. At this moment, his heart was filled with indescribable bitterness. But soon after, his gaze became extremely cold. A powerful pressure that belonged to the Divine King realm radiated from his body. The laws turned into divine chains that revolved around him as he stared at Jianshan with shining eyes. He thought, Old Man is a Divine King realm expert. Even if I can't win this battle, I can't let Jianshan win so easily. Old Man will still use his full strength in this battle. Elder Mu Ku moved. He wielded a wooden staff as he charged at Jianshan with surging battle intent. The terrifying cultivation of the Divine King realm surged out from his body, condensing on the wooden staff in his hand in a single instance. With the laws on the level of the Divine King, he stabbed it towards Jianshan with overwhelming force. Elder Mu Ku did not hold back at all. He used his full strength, causing the strike to be extraordinarily powerful. When he struck out with the wooden staff, the terrifying energy within it actually affected the space in the ring, causing it to distort. Outside the ring, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect and the Divine King both frowned slightly. The two of them could naturally tell that Mu Ku was using his full strength. They had no idea whether Jianshan could really deal with Mu Ku when he was so powerful. Although it was rumored that Jianshan had defeated a Divine King in the northern region, it was only a rumor in the end. In reality, they had no idea whether the rumor was exaggerated or whether the Divine King was injured or not. As for being able to contend with the Supreme Overgod who ranked first on the Overgod's plaque, that was only used to describe Jianshan's strength. Jianshan had not even attempted the Overgod's plaque after all. Just what was his ranking on the Overgod's plaque with his true strength? Did he really have the right to contend with the person ranked first? None of this had been decided yet. Does this Mu Ku want to go against me? The Earth Spirit sect's ancestor's heart sank slightly. Specks of cold light flickered in his deep, ink-black eyes. Jianshan's face did not change at all as he faced Elder Mu Ku's aggressive strike. He wielded the startling rainbow sword and protected himself with light as he stabbed out with composure. The strike was simple and plain, without any extravagance at all. However, it was this simple strike that possessed extremely deep mysteries of the laws of the sword. It was also compatible with the laws of the sword. Coupled with the powerful and destructive chaotic force, the might of Jianshan's strike had completely surpassed the level of Overgods. It had barely reached the level of the Divine King. Chapter 1972. The moment Jianshan and Ku Mu struck out, the elders of the Earth Spirit sect all narrowed their eyes. Not only did they focus on the battle between the two of them, but they even expanded the senses of their souls into the surroundings of the stage. They wanted to see the battle between the two of them clearly without missing a single trace. This was because this was an unprecedented battle where an over-god challenged a god-king. Even with the entire Saint world in perspective, a battle like this was extremely rare. After all, basically all the people who had the right to challenge a divine king as over-gods were supreme prodigies who ranked in the top 10 of the over-gods plaque. Even the divine king and the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stared at the stage. They wanted to personally witness whether Jianshun possessed the legendary strength to defeat a divine king of the northern region as an over-god. Boom! Under everyone's close attention, Jianshun and Elder Mu finally clashed for the first time. A violent rumble immediately erupted in the stage as powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc in a visible shockwave. Jianshun and Mu Ku both used laws to protect themselves. Energy flickered on their bodies as they stood as still as mountains. Not only did Jianshun block Mu Ku's full-powered strike perfectly, but he even seemed to be evenly matched with Mu Ku. Mu Ku's eyes immediately narrowed after the strike. His gaze towards Jianshun finally became stern. He truly understood Jianshun's strength from the clash this time. He understood that Jianshun was not just famous. Instead, he really did possess the strength to fight against the divine king. Jianshun was emotionless. His eyes shone with icy cold light. They were as sharp as swords. He stopped Elder Mu's staff with a startling rainbow sword as he formed a seal with his other hand. Immediately, a strand of golden sword chi condensed above his head. It radiated with powerful sword intent. The sword intent was so powerful that even Elder Mu's expression changed slightly as a divine king. He could clearly sense that the golden sword chi above Jianshun's head was so powerful that it could threaten him. Elder Mu reacted extremely quickly. As soon as Jianshun condensed the Daluo sword, he bellowed out and suddenly retreated. At the same time, he swung his staff. Strands of the power of laws wove together, rapidly condensing into a huge piece of wood. When the wood appeared, the might of the world immediately accompanied it. The power within it was so great that it was enough to make any early divine king of the Earth Spirit sect change their expression. Jianshun's Daluo sword had directly forced Mu Ku to use a battle skill as well. Mu Ku has actually used a battle skill. It looks like Jianshun really does have some ability. He's actually forced the divine king to use a battle skill as an over-god. He really is someone who can contend for first place on the over-gods plaque after all. He really is very powerful. Jianshun really does live up to his name. So what if he doesn't live up to his name? Although the prodigies who rank towards the top of the over-gods plaque possess the right to kill a divine king, that's only an ordinary divine king. Mu Ku is not an ordinary divine king. He has comprehended the various cultivation methods and battle skills of our Earth Spirit sect. Although he's not one of the most powerful early divine king, he's no ordinary person either. That's right. If Mu Ku didn't use a battle skill, Jianshun would indeed be able to match Mu Ku. However, since Mu Ku has used a battle skill, Jianshun is definitely going to lose. Many of the divine king elders of the Earth Spirit sect sighed in amazement. This was the first time they had seen such a powerful over-god fight a divine king as an over-god and force a divine king to use a battle skill. After all, they had only heard rumors about battles between over-gods and divine kings in the past. Moreover, many of the rumors were exaggerated. However, when the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect saw how Mu Ku not only did not follow his orders, but he also became more and more valiant as he fought, as if he would not give up until he defeated Jianshun, his eyes could not help but become rather sunken. Go! At this moment, Mu Ku called out from the ring. As he extended a finger, the huge piece of wood immediately shone with green light. It turned into a streak of light and shot towards Jianshun with unbelievable speed. Boom! The huge piece of wood collided with the Daluo sword, erupting with a deafening sound. The entire ring shook violently from their attacks, and web-like cracks appeared on the ground. However, Jianshun's attacks were as violent as a storm. Before the first wave had even subsided, another wave rose up. As soon as the Daluo sword collided with the huge piece of wood, a streak of light enveloped Jianshun's body. Afterwards, he turned into a bolt of lightning and shot off with unbelievable speed. How is Jianshin so powerful? He's even blocked Old Man's battle skill. He's only an overgod. Muku sighed in amazement at Jianshin's strength. He knew that with the ancestors' orders, he could only lose this battle. However, he did not want to lose too miserably. Originally, he wanted to use his cultivation as a divine king to heavily injure Jianshin before giving up on resisting before everyone, losing to Jianshin like that. He wanted to tell everyone just how helpless and powerless he was about to lose. It was not because he was not Jianshin's opponent. However, he had never thought that Jianshin's strength would completely exceed his expectations. He had already used his full strength and even used his battle skill, but he was still able to match Jianshin. He did not gain any advantage at all. However, just as Muku sighed in amazement, his eyes suddenly narrowed. A streak of light suddenly shot over with unbelievable speed from up ahead. It pierced through Elder Muku's body in a single instance. It was fast. It was just far too fast. The streak of light was so fast that even with Muku's cultivation as a divine king, he was unable to catch it with his naked eye. Although he could sense it with the senses of his soul, he did not have any time to react at such a short distance. Muku's body stiffened. He lowered his head as he stared at the bowl-sized hole in his chest in shock. He struggled to accept this outcome. How did this happen? What secret technique did Jianshin use earlier? It's actually so fast. Outside the ring, all the elders of the Earth Spirit sect were shocked as well. Such an outcome had completely exceeded their expectations as well. Muku has lost this battle. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood up and announced the outcome of the battle. At the same time, he finally let out a sigh of relief and sighed. Jianshin, according to the rules from before, Muku's life is now up to you to decide, the ancestor said to Jianshin. At the same time, he removed the barrier around the stage. Jianshin, are you fine? The divine king appeared before Jianshin silently and asked in concern. Thank you for your concern, your majesty. I'm fine, said Jianshin. Then he looked at Muku as cold light flickered through his eyes. Muku turned around in a daze. He stared at Jianshin with gloomy eyes and said, Jianshin, do it. With that, Muku closed his eyes and fell silent. Brother Jianshin, please show mercy and spare Su Muku's life. We will definitely be eternally grateful. Brother Jianshin, please spare us. We're willing to compensate you in other ways. We just hope that you spare Muku's life. Many of the Divine King's elders in the Earth Spirit sect pleaded for mercy. Even the master of the Earth Spirit sect looked at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, hoping that he could step forward and save Muku. The Divine King was a pillar of support for the Earth Spirit sect. He was extremely valued. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect remained emotionless. He said nothing. Chapter 1973. Jianshin's unexpected idea stunned everyone present. Even the Divine King was extremely surprised. However, the elders of the Earth Spirit sect who had pleaded on Muku's behalf all beamed with joy. In their eyes, guarding the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years was nothing compared to their own lives. Every single divine king among them had lived for a very long time. Who knew how many years they had lived? 10,000 years was just too short to them. The sect master of the Earth Spirit sect finally let out a sigh of relief. Even though he also felt that it was extremely humiliating for a divine king to guard a clan that only had an overgod for 10,000 years, it was nothing compared to Muku's life. Moreover, this overgod was no ordinary overgod. Instead, he possessed extraordinary battle prowess, a supreme overgod who truly possessed the right to contend with the person who ranked first on the overgod's plaque. Once an overgod like that became a divine king, he would definitely become an expert who stood above the divine king in the future. He might even be able to contend with primordial realm experts with his cultivation as a divine king. Guarding a clan for a supreme overgod like that for 10,000 years was not something to be ashamed of. Elder Muku, stop hesitating. Agree quickly. Many divine king elders, and even the sect master of the Earth Spirit sect, all communicated with Elder Mu secretly. Elder Mu stood on the stage with a pale face. He was dejected as he stared at Jianshan blankly. Naturally, he heard the messages from many elders. However, it was extremely difficult for him, a mighty divine king, to guard a clan for someone else for 10,000 years. Elder Mu stood on the stage silently for a very long time as he struggled inside. In the end, he slowly turned his head and looked at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood in the distance calmly. He did not show any emotions at all. In the end, Elder Mu looked at Jianshan. He stared at this rising star who was only an overgod, but possessed battle prowess so great that even he was not his opponent. He sighed helplessly inside and said with some sorrow, "I will guard your Tianyuan family for 10,000 years." It took Mu Ku a lot of effort to say this short sentence. After saying these words, his entire person became dispirited, as if he had lost his soul, and he was listless. Since the grievances have been resolved, it's time for us to leave. Saying two, "Let's catch up another day," the divine king said to the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor clasped his fist towards the divine king. After a simple greeting, he bid farewell to him. Afterwards, the divine king and Jianshan boarded the carriage and left under the gazes of the elders and disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. Elder Mu did not leave with them. He would be staying with the Tianyuan family this time, protecting the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years. As a result, he had some matters to deal with in the sect before he left. "Mu Ku, come see me," the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said to Mu Ku before drifting off. Origin energy had turned into mist on the tallest mountain in the Earth Spirit sect. It formed a faint mist that coiled around the peak of the mountain, causing the mountain to become indistinct. It was like it was within a sea of clouds. The mountain was the spiritual symbol of the Earth Spirit sect. At the same time, it was the pillar of the sect. It was the backbone that propped up the sect's prosperity. This was because it was where the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect cultivated. At this moment, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood on the edge of a cliff on the top of the mountain. He stared at the world in the distance deeply as the wind whistled through the air, ruffling his silver-white hair and clothes. Behind him was the current sect master of the Earth Spirit sect and the dejected Mu Ku. They stood there respectfully. "Mu Ku, do you know why I defeated you?" The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said calmly with his back towards them. However, there was a hint of helplessness in his calm voice. "Originally, I did not understand, but I understood afterwards. It's because the primordial realm expert behind Jianshan is very powerful," said Mu Ku. "Ancestor, do you know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Jianshan?" The sect master asked. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect sighed deeply. "I don't know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Jianshan, but that person is not someone our Earth Spirit sect can afford to provoke. She's so powerful that she only needs to raise a hand to destroy our Earth Spirit sect." As he said that, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect could not help but think about what had happened 3 days ago. At that time, he was cultivating in seclusion in his secret room when a beautiful woman in white robes silently appeared in his secret room. If it weren't for the aura that the woman released waking him up, he probably wouldn't have known that a stranger had broken into this secret room that had set up layers upon layers of formations without his knowledge. Although the woman did not attack him, the pressure she gave off was so powerful that the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect still remembered it like it was yesterday. That pressure was something he would never forget for the rest of his life. In the face of this pressure, he felt that he did not even have the strength to resist. It was as though he was facing a primordial chaos expert and was as weak as an ant. He had no doubt that the woman possessed the terrifying strength to obliterate the Earth Spirit sect with just a raise of her hand. How could his Earth Spirit sect afford to offend such a supreme expert? Whether it was Elder Mu Ku or the current sect master of the Earth Spirit sect, they were both shocked when they heard the ancestor's words. They had heard that there was a primordial realm expert behind Jianshan, but they had never thought that the primordial realm expert would possess such terrifying strength, where even the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect feared her so much. "Do you understand now?" A sliver of bitterness appeared on the ancestor's face. He said helplessly, We can't afford to offend the person behind Jinshin, but our Earth Spirit sect has to maintain our dignity after all. If we directly admit defeat and the news spreads, it'll be bad for our Earth Spirit sect's reputation. That's why we let you fight Jinshin and lose to Jinshin in public. That way, not only will we be able to give an explanation to Jinshin and avoid offending the expert behind Jinshin, but we'll also be able to maintain the dignity of our Earth Spirit sect. Although it's not very glorious for a divine king to lose to an overgod, Jinshin has already defeated a divine king in the northern region. He already possesses the strength to rank first on the overgod's plaque, so it's not embarrassing for him to lose to a supreme overgod like that. Muku, go pack up. Once you're ready, we'll set off. Protect the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years. Yes, ancestor, Muku replied politely. His heart was filled with warmth. Now, he finally understood why his ancestor had told him that he could only lose in the battle against Jinshin and not win. As it turned out, Jinshin actually had a supreme expert who could easily destroy the Earth Spirit sect behind him. It was no wonder that the ancestor would make a decision like that. After the sect master and Muku left, the ancestor stood on the cliff silently for a while. Afterwards, with a flip of his hand, a piece of jade immediately appeared in his hand. He held the piece of jade and recorded information on it with the senses of his soul. A while later, he suddenly looked into the distance, and with a wave of his hand, he tossed the piece of jade out. Immediately, the piece of jade turned into a white streak of light, shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished in a single instance. Several middle-aged men appeared silently in the depths of the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. They hovered above the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair as they stared down with sunken faces. Below them, the mountains had already collapsed. Rubble had been piled up, and it was a mess. Amidst the rubble, one could clearly see several gigantic figures lying on the ground. Even though these figures were already dead, they still radiated with rather powerful presences. Every single one of them possessed the strength of a late divine king when they were alive. Who is it? Who was the culprit? Who was it that stole this emperor's great Tao flower? A middle-aged man stood at the very front in purplish golden robes. He was dignified as he stared down coldly as he spoke through gritted teeth. The middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. 9th prince, I've already sent people to investigate, but this is related to a primordial realm expert, after all. It'll take some time to find out anything. However, I believe we'll find some clues very soon. A divine king behind the 9th prince said carefully. Hurry up and investigate. I want to know the identity of this primordial realm expert as soon as possible. So what if you're a primordial realm expert to steal my flower of ways? The 9th prince's eyes were cold. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the divine king. He was only a step away from the primordial realm. Originally, he could have crossed this step easily with the flower of ways. It would not have taken him too much time. However, now that the flower of ways had been stolen, the time he needed to break through to the primordial realm would be extended indefinitely. At this moment, a white piece of jade tore through the air and hovered in front of the 9th prince. The 9th prince stared at the jade slip calmly and slowly caught it. He said, "This item should have come from a primordial realm expert, but there are only a few primordial realm experts in the Heavenly Moon Empire." Looking at the direction the jade slip came from, it should have come from the person from the Earth Spirit sect. 9th prince, does the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect know anything about the jade slip? A person behind the 9th prince asked. I hope so, the 9th prince said coldly. He immediately sent the senses of his soul into the jade slip. Very soon, he read through the contents of the jade slip. A cold light flashed through his eyes, and he crushed the jade slip to pieces. He said emotionlessly, "Let's go to the Dong, and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian." Jinshin directly returned to the Tianyuan family. As soon as he returned, he could clearly sense that the atmosphere of the entire clan had become extraordinarily lively. It was enveloped by a heavy atmosphere of joy. Patriarch, you finally returned. Shiyu has successfully broken through and become an overgod. and Mo Ling saw Jianshan from afar and immediately ran overexcitedly. The Tianyuan family had gained an overgod. This was definitely something worth celebrating. This was because overgods were still the rulers of a province in the current divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu. Jianshan could not help but think of the embroidered box he had given to Princess Tai, and when he mentioned Shiyu. Chapter 1974. Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an overgod. From today onwards, you can be regarded as a renowned expert in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianshan smiled happily when he saw Shiyu. He congratulated her sincerely from the bottom of his heart. There were not a lot of overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, and a few of them had died during the battle against the heavenly demon religion. As a result, there were even fewer overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu had successfully broken through and become an overgod under these circumstances, so she naturally possessed an extremely great status in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. She wore a luxurious white dress. Her glossy, black hair had been specially styled as well. It was tied up in a beautiful knot behind her head. At this moment, she no longer looked like a chivalrous woman like before. Instead, she gave off the feeling of a lady from a noble family, a young miss from a wealthy family. It's all thanks to the patriarch's nurturing that I was able to become an overgod in such a short amount of time. Shiyu bowed slightly. Her voice was gentle and extremely pleasant. The light in her eyes flickered as she stared at Jianshan. Shiyu's talent was indeed very great. With the talent she had displayed, there was no need for her to cultivate for so long to become an overgod. She could have done it in an even shorter amount of time. However, the Mo clan in the past was just too weak. They were only a god clan, so they did not possess the resources and heritage to nurture a prodigy like Shiyu. As a result, Shiyu had only reached godhood after 2,000 years of cultivation in the Mo clan. Only when she met Jianshan and received Jianshan's full nurturing, along with a large number of divine crystals and his comprehension of the laws of the sword, did Shiyu's strength skyrocket. She went from a deity to an overgod in such a short amount of time. Shiyu's talent is no weaker than the supreme prodigies of large sects. Jianshan could not help but sigh in amazement. Over the past few days, he could be considered to have met quite a number of geniuses from the ancient dynasties. He more or less had some understanding of these geniuses. Now, that he compared Shiyu to these so-called prodigies, he discovered that Shiyu is actually much more powerful than them. Jianshan looked at Shiyu with some mixed feelings as well. He said, "Shiyu, with your talent, remaining in the Tianyuan family is just wasting your potential. The current Tianyuan family doesn't have the conditions to nurture you properly. Remaining here will only hinder your future. Only those peak sects of eternal empires can allow you to stand even higher and go further. Are you chasing me away?" Shiyu stared at Jianshan with some gloominess and disappointment. Jianshan shook his head and sighed gently. "I have no intentions of chasing you away. I'm just thinking for you. I hope you can go even further on your path of cultivation, or even become an expert who stands at the apex of the Saints' world." The original patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, looked at Shiyu and sighed inside. He said, The patriarch is right. You can consider whether you want to listen to the patriarch and join some peak sections." Mo Xingfeng had basically watched Shiyu grow up. No one understood her better than him, which made him feel very helpless. Now, he did hope that Shiyu could leave the Tianyuan family temporarily and join a peak sect in an ancient empire. That would be better for her. "No, I can't let Sister Shiyu go. Sister Shiyu, please don't leave me. I really don't want to be separated from Sister Shiyu." At this moment, Mo Yin ran over as well. She only grabbed Shiyu's arm as she spoke with great reluctance. Afterwards, she waved her fist at Jianshan and said fiercely, "Patriarch Jianshan, you can't let Sister Shiyu go, or I definitely won't forgive you." Jianshan smiled and looked at Mo Yin rather helplessly. Although Mo Yin was older than him, Jianshan had already begun to treat her as his own sister. He cared for her from the bottom of his heart. However, Jianshan felt troubled as soon as he mentioned Mo Yin's cultivation. The girl hated cultivation very much. She would throw a tantrum as soon as cultivation was mentioned. As a result, her cultivation basically did not advance at all in all these years. She remained at sainthood. Thank you for your concern, Patriarch. However, I have no interest in joining those large sections. Moreover, you still haven't joined any sects, right? Your strength is still increasing extremely rapidly. As a result, I believe in myself. Even if I don't join those large sects, I'll still become an expert in the future, Shiyu said firmly. Jinshin was helpless when he saw how determined Shiyu was. He could only sigh gently inside and turn around to leave. Unknowingly, Jinshin had already entered the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. The forbidden grounds were enveloped by a powerful formation. The number of people in the Tianyuan family who had the right to enter the forbidden grounds could be counted on one hand. Jinshin could not help but think of Shangguan as he stood in the forbidden grounds. Originally, Shangguan should have been cultivating in seclusion here, waiting for his triumphant return. However, he had never thought that his trip to the northern region would lead to his parting with Shangguan Mu. May I ask if you've already arrived at the Taoist sect of Divine Sound? Have you been well there? You have to be well in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound and wait for me to pick you up. Although I don't know where the Skyfire Plane is or how far it is from the Cloud Plane, I will definitely go there. Jinshin clenched his fists tightly as his gaze became extremely determined. However, at this moment, Jinshin's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he suddenly looked back. A beautiful figure stood behind him, staring at Jinshin calmly. Kea, it's you. Jinshin was surprised. He stared at Kea in shock as his heart was in turmoil. This was because he had actually failed to sense Kea's approach earlier. He did not even know when Kea had appeared behind him or how long she had been standing there. Jinshin immediately focused his attention and studied Kea carefully. He immediately gasped when he saw her. Disbelief filled his face as his heart churned. Kea, your cultivation, Jinshin said in shock. At that moment, he even began to doubt whether what he was seeing was real. This was because he discovered that Kea's strength had directly risen to late over God in such a short amount of time. Jinshin felt like he was dreaming. After all, how long had Kea been awake? When she had just woken up, she was only a holy emperor, yet she had become a late over God now. Jinshin was utterly dumbfounded by how quickly her strength increased. He was completely unable to catch up. Probably only the reincarnated primordial realm expert, Fairy Haoyue, could match Kea's cultivation speed. Jinshin, thank you for the monster core and the large number of divine crystals you gave me. It's exactly because of these cultivation items that my cultivation has been able to increase so quickly, Kea said to Jinshin. From how calm she was, it was as if she had no idea just how great of an uproar her rapid cultivation would cause in the Saint's world. You can increase your cultivation by absorbing a large number of divine crystals, but your comprehension of the laws of the world. Jinshin hesitated. Kea had surprised him far too much. A sliver of confusion appeared in Kea's eyes. She said, I don't know what's going on either. My comprehension of the laws of the world seems to be especially easy. I can always grasp the power of laws without using any effort at all. I've already grasped 3 laws now, and I seem to absorb the energy from divine crystals hundreds of times faster than other people. As she said that, Kea immediately used the power of laws with a thought. Immediately, 3 different laws condensed. Chapter 1975. Jinshin looked at Kea with extremely mixed feelings. Kea had shocked him far too much, and many things could not be explained with common sense. The rate at which her strength increased was unbelievable as well. She cultivated so quickly and comprehended laws so easily, which even made Jinshin wonder whether Kea was the reincarnation of a supreme expert. This was because only Fairy Haoyue, a primordial realm expert who had retained all her memories, could increase her strength so quickly. Kea, although your cultivation path has been smooth without any exaggeration, where you haven't encountered any bottlenecks at all, I still have to suggest that you don't increase your cultivation too quickly, just in case your foundation becomes unstable. Jinshin stared at Kea and said sternly. After all, Kea was not Fairy Haoyue. Jinshin became slightly worried when he saw how quickly she cultivated. He was worried that Kea's rapid cultivation would leave behind extremely great problems that would affect her future. She might even be doomed in the end. Yeah, I understand that as well. As a result, I don't plan on cultivating in the next few days. I'll focus all of my efforts on consolidating my cultivation, just in case I end up leaving behind any problems, Jinshin agreed. After a moment of hesitation, he stared at Jinshin with shining eyes and said rather eagerly, Jinshin, although I've reached late over God, all I have is strength. I haven't fought anyone yet, so I don't know just how powerful I am right now. Why don't we spar and test my current battle prowess? All right, the Saint World is different from the Tianyuan continent. You didn't have much battle experience back on the Tianyuan continent, so you need to properly temper yourself now that you've come to the Saint World. Moreover, you've gained so much strength in such a short amount of time. You also need to experience many battles before you can use it with familiarity. Jinshin agreed in an extremely straightforward manner before leaving the Tianyuan family with Kea. As Kaya was a late over-god now, the shockwaves from their battle would not be something the Dong and province could endure. As a result, Jinshin chose a desolate mountain range far away from the provincial city that was devoid of people. Jinshin hovered above the mountain range as he stared at Kea calmly. He said, Kea, go ahead. Jinshin, be careful, Jinshin said sternly. With that, her presence suddenly changed. At the same time, the temperature in the surroundings suddenly skyrocketed. Flames surged around Kea, blazing in the air. They gave off terrifying heat, dyeing the surroundings red. The thick layer of clouds in the sky directly dispersed at that moment, directly vaporized by the terrifying heat from the flames around Kea. Jinshin could not help but become rather stern as he stared at the laws of fire around Kea. He thought, strange. Kea's laws of fire seem to be slightly different from the laws of fire that other people comprehend. It seems like the laws of fire that Kea grasps are even purer than the laws of fire that other late overgods comprehend. If the laws of fire that other overgods comprehend contain some impurities, Kea's laws of fire are extremely pure. There are no impurities at all. Jinshin felt extremely surprised once again. Kea was truly different from ordinary people. At this moment, Kea struck out. The flames around her surged as she controlled an endless sea of fire. She radiated with terrifying heat as she shot towards Jinshin with lightning speed. Her presence was even more shocking, surging into the clouds and shaking up the surroundings. She seemed like a goddess of war. She slapped out with her hand, and the endless sea of flames behind her danced with her palm. The majestic flames gathered in an instant, compressed into the size of a palm, and emitted a dazzling light that was like the sun, making people not dare to look at it directly. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes, and he became extremely stern. He did not use the startling rainbow sword. Instead, he struck out with his hand as well. Chaotic force accompanied his palm strike, giving off a destructive presence. The laws of the sword coiled around his palm strike as well, causing it to be black and white. Boom! The two palms collided, erupting with a heavy sound. Terrifying ripples of energy shot out in all directions, and the mountains beneath their feet all exploded. Dust filled the air. Jinshin and Kea remained as still as mountains in the air. Their palms remained pressed together, and one of them shone with black and white light. Chaotic force and sword light surged. The other person's hand was as dazzling as the sun, like a miniature sun that had been shrunk countless times. It was dazzling and resplendent, radiating with terrifying heat. The surrounding space was dyed red, as if the air was burning. Jinshin shivered inside. Even though he had only used 70% of his strength in that strike, Kea was still able to match him, which surprised him greatly. However, in the next moment, his hand changed. It turned into a sword and shot out a 3-inch-long streak of light, which he directly slashed towards Kea's hand. Even though the sword chi had been shot out from Jinshin's fingers, Jinshin had already used 80% of his strength, causing the sword chi to be able to pierce through space. The laws of fire that had been compressed by Kea to a high degree was directly cut in half by Jianshun. However, the laws of fire that had been cut in half by Jianshun did not disperse because of that. Instead, they turned into two streaks of red light and shot towards Jianshun with unbelievable speed. At the same time, Kea launched a second palm strike. His hand was enveloped in flames, and it shot towards Jianshun with strands of heavenly might. Immediately, Jianshun felt like a mysterious power had permeated his surroundings. It made him feel like he had become bogged down, making his movements abnormally slow. Jianshun's eyes narrowed. Kea's attack had completely caught him off guard. Moreover, through the two clashes, he discovered that Kea's usage of the laws of fire had already reached perfection. He did not seem like a newbie who had just comprehended the power of laws at all. Moreover, he could clearly sense that Kea's moves seemed to contain some sort of mystery. He was clearly attacking casually, but he seemed to be in harmony with the world. It was as if every single move and strike was a battle skill, so they were extremely powerful. In the blink of an eye, when the two strands of laws of fire shot towards Jianshun, Jianshun extended a finger at the same time. Two strands of sword chi shot out from between his fingers, blocking the two strands of laws of fire. Afterwards, he brought his hands together, and chaotic force surged between his palms. A black strand of sword chi that was a meter long silently condensed, stabbing out with a devastating presence. Although Jianshun and Kea were sparring to test Kea's strength, their battle was extremely intense. Booms rang through the surroundings as the laws of the sword and the laws of fire intersected in the air, clashing time and time again. The mountains below had already been reduced to a mess. The few specks of green in the mountains had already been reduced to ashes by the terrifying heat. As a matter of fact, some of the tough rocks had even been reduced to a red liquid in just a few seconds when some of the sparks fell. Jianshun's strength had increased from the initial 70% to 80%. However, when Kea used the laws of destruction, he used both the laws of destruction and the laws of fire at the same time, forcing Jianshun to use 90% of his strength. He had even used the startling rainbow sword. After Kea used the laws of destruction, the battle prowess he displayed had exceeded the range of late over gods. He had basically taken a step into the divine king's domain. It was not that the laws of destruction were too powerful. Purely in terms of ranking, the laws of destruction were only on par with the laws of the sword. However, in Kea's hands, the laws of destruction were like the laws of fire, able to unleash extraordinary might. It was as if Kea possessed an unimaginable understanding and control over both the laws of fire and the laws of destruction, allowing him to unleash power beyond his current level of cultivation. Jianshun even suspected that even though they were both over gods, his understanding and control over the laws of the sword was not as good as Kea's. This was because Kea's usage of the laws of fire and the laws of destruction had reached a level of perfection in Jianshun's eyes. It was unbelievable. Is Kea born with the laws of destruction and the laws of fire? Jianshun even wondered. However, at this moment, darkness descended and the surroundings suddenly darkened. A huge, demonic cloud permeated the surroundings, blotting out the sun and plunging the barren mountains into darkness. Jianshun, you sure are bold. You've offended my heavenly demon religion, yet you don't hide in the imperial capital and get Pingtian to protect you. Instead, you've come to the wilderness. A cold voice filled with killing intent rang out in the surroundings as the darkness spread. Jianshun and Kea both stopped their sparring due to the sudden development. In particular, when the rather familiar voice rang out, Jianshun's face changed drastically. Huayan, Jianshun growled as he became extremely stern. Without any hesitation, he pushed Kea far away and called out, "Run!" Jianshun had never thought that Huayan, one of the three vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, would actually come for him personally. His heart immediately sank. This was a primordial realm expert. With his current strength, he did not even have the ability to flee before someone like that. Kea did not flee. She arrived before Jianshun again and raised her head, looking at the sky. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the dark clouds and see the figures hidden within. Chapter 1976. Kea shook his head calmly when he saw how worried Jinshin was. He said seriously, "I'm not leaving. If I'm leaving, you should leave first. You saved my life. So how can I flee alone now that you're in danger?" Kea's indifferent voice was filled with determination. Why are you so stupid? This is a primordial realm expert. He's so powerful that even the two of us together can't fend him off. He's specially come for me, so it has nothing to do with you. If you leave, he might not chase after you, but if you stay, you'll just lose your life for nothing, Jinshan said in a hurry, hoping to stop Kea from leaving. He knew just how great the difference between him and a primordial realm expert was. It was a chasm, so he had already given up on the thought of fleeing before such an expert. This was because he knew that even if he used the linear lightning release, he would not be able to escape from a primordial realm expert. Jinshan, you're about to die, yet you're still in the mood to worry about others. It looks like this girl's status in your heart is quite high. Whatever. If that's the case, I'll kill the two of you together. Hawaiian sneer rang out from outer space, and it boomed through the surroundings like thunder. With that, the demonic clouds in the sky surged violently, condensing into a huge hand in a single instance. It radiated with a terrifying presence that could destroy the world. At the same time, the two remaining vice leaders sat within a hall in the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. Black mist permeated their surroundings, completely obscuring their figures. Huan really can't help himself and has moved against Jinshin. An old voice rang out. The vice leader referred to as Elder Son had spoken. There was some helplessness in his voice. I knew it would be like this. Huan has always been narrow-minded and vengeful. Not only did Jinshin protect the successor of Duanmu, who had grievances with Huan in the past, but he had also captured Yashi Lian a while ago and used her to threaten Huan, forcing Huan into an extremely passive situation. In the end, he could only agree to the half-month ceasefire that the Divine King had proposed. This matter definitely had something to do with Jinshin, so how could Huan not resent him? Moreover, this kid called Jinshin really does possess impressive talent. If he successfully matures, he'll definitely become a peak expert in the future. As a result, Huan needs to take action and nip him in the bud. Otherwise, once Jinshin truly becomes powerful, Huan will be in trouble, said the vice leader, Ihuayue. I don't care about Jinshin's life or death. However, the response of the higher-ups makes me feel like this matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface. There's definitely something we don't know about hidden within. I even suspect that the disappearance of the blood and soul beads was purposefully arranged by the higher-ups. If all of this really was arranged by the higher-ups, I'm worried that Huan's actions against Jinshin will ruin the plans of the higher-ups unintentionally. The consequences are not something we can bear, Elder Son said with some worry. Elder Son, we've already warned Huan before. He's the one who insists on doing things his own way. If his actions really do ruin the plans of the higher-ups, it'll be Huan's responsibility alone. It has nothing to do with the two of us, said Ihuayue. Although the three vice leaders differed in strength, their statuses were the same. None of them could control the other. Since Huan insisted on doing things his own way, the two of them had no right to interfere. You're right. Anyway, we can't take part in this matter. Let's just watch how it develops, Elderson nodded. The vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huan, hovered in the demonic clouds within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. As he pressed down gently with his hand, the huge hand condensed from the clouds immediately slammed down towards Jinshin and Kea with an extremely terrifying pressure. The strike of a primordial realm expert was extremely powerful. As the hand descended, the terrifying pressure directly caused the mountains below to rumble heavily. Before the hand had even landed, the rocks below were already unable to endure it and had all exploded. As for Jinshin and Kea, they were completely immobilized by the hand. It was as if their entire bodies had been trapped. Jinshin became extremely stern as he stared at the hand that slowly descended. Even though he knew he would not be able to escape today, he would not just sit there and wait for death. In the next moment, Two finger-sized strands of profound sword chi hovered above his head. They radiated with surging sword chi. At this moment, the only thing he could use was the profound sword chi. Once the fusion of the twin swords was exposed before a primordial realm expert, the chances of his identity being exposed would be far too great. At that time, it would not just be him and Kea that would die. Even the Tianyuan family would be doomed. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around Kea as her presence rapidly soared. Vaguely, the mysteries of ways seemed to revolve around her. Clearly, she was the same as Jianshan. She wanted to fight to the death. Swish! Swish! Two whizzing sounds rang out as two streaks of dazzling white light tore through the sky. Along the way, they exuded towering sword chi as they charged with an indomitable momentum towards the palm formed from the boundless black clouds in the sky. Jianshan struck out first, shooting out two strands of profound sword chi at the same time. However, the power of his soul was basically depleted as soon as he shot out the two strands of profound sword chi. Immediately, he felt dizzy. Afterwards, Kea struck out as well. She formed seals with her hands as the laws of creation, destruction, and fire danced around her fingertips. In the end, they condensed into a complicated, profound inscription. It possessed endless mysteries as it shot into the sky with the presence of ways. When Jianshan's two strands of profound sword chi came in contact with a hand condensed from demonic aura, the profound sword chi directly shot into the hand and melted a 10-meter wide hole in it. However, that was all. The profound sword chi was unable to pierce the hand, let alone destroy it. It only managed to melt a 10-meter wide hole before the two strands of profound sword chi dispersed. Boom! However, in the next moment, there was a deafening rumble. Kea's inscription, condensed from the power of 3 laws, received the attack. Kea's usage of laws had reached a level of mastery, where it had even surpassed Jianshan's usage of the laws of the sword. As a result, her attack with the power of 3 laws was naturally extraordinary. However, she was only an overgod after all. She was just too far away from the primordial realm. As a result, the inscriptions she condensed from the laws of creation, destruction, and fire were still unable to block a casual strike from Huai, and Kea's inscription collapsed with a boom, while the huge hand condensed from demonic aura did not slow down at all. It enveloped Jianshan and Kea with devastating power. Just when Jianshan and Kea were about to face death, a clear thrum of a sword suddenly rang out. A huge, snow-white sword chi ripped through space, shooting over from afar like it had teleported. Wherever the sword chi passed by, origin energy would tremble, and space would be ripped open. It left behind an extremely thin, black crack in space, like a line being drawn in the sky. The sword chi had actually directly ripped through space. This was the Saint's world. Space was extremely tough. Even when the Divine King fought, he could only make space ripple slightly. Chapter 1977. Boom! Amidst the deafening roar, the sword chi unleashed a terrifying might. It directly collided with the palm formed from endless demonic aura in the sky. A terrifying energy shockwave erupted, flattening the mountain range, causing the ground below to sink and crack. The ripples of energy were truly terrifying. Even with Jianshan and Kea's strength, they were unable to endure it. They were pushed back again and again by the ripples of energy. If it were not for the fact that the ripples of energy had only been created by a casual attack from a primordial realm expert, and if it were not for the fact that the sword chi had not dispersed after destroying the hand condensed from demonic aura, nullifying most of the storm of energy that shot towards Jianshan and Kea, the two of them probably would not have been able to remain unscathed before the terrifying storm of energy. They would definitely have been injured. Swish! The sound of something shooting through the air rang out once again. After destroying the hand condensed from demonic aura, the sword chi continued to radiate with shocking might, shooting towards the demonic clouds with extremely sharp sword chi. The sword chi was resplendent as it blossomed with light. It was as intense as the sun as it illuminated the entire sky, causing the black clouds in the sky to turn into white clouds in an instant. Oof. A cold snort rang out from the demonic clouds. Primordial realm laws descended from the demonic clouds, turning into a chain that shot out like a bolt of lightning. It collided with the sword chi. When the two collided, another deafening boom rang out. Just the terrifying sound waves caused the ground to shake violently. It was as if the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian was experiencing an earthquake. As for this desolate mountain that had already become a complete mess, not only had all the mountain rocks turned into ashes, even the ground below had collapsed in large areas, forming a huge black abyss. Sword Immortal. Jinshin was surprised when he sensed the power of the sword chi. The owner of the sword chi had already reached the third realm of the Way of the Sword, the Sword Immortal. Jinshin subconsciously looked behind him. He saw a dignified, middle-aged man in 9 dragon robes walk over. He was clearly extremely far away, where even with Jinshin's vision, he was still extremely blurry. However, in the next moment, he crossed the distance with just a single step, directly appearing before Jinshin. He stared at the figure hidden in the demonic clouds coldly. The middle-aged man was the Divine King. Huayan, you've overstepped your boundaries. The Divine King's long hair fluttered in the wind as he stood before Jinshin in his dragon robes. He stared at Huayan in a dignified manner as he gave off the presence of a ruler. In particular, the laws of the sword revolved around him. The Divine King is actually an expert who has comprehended the laws of the sword. Jinshin was secretly surprised. He was extremely surprised. The laws of the sword were one of the laws with the greatest offensive power. A primordial realm expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword would definitely possess battle prowess, much greater than primordial realm experts who had comprehended some weaker laws. However, although Jinshin had interacted with the Divine King for some time now, he had no idea what kind of law the Divine King had comprehended. Although the Divine King had used the power of the laws of the primordial realm in the battle between the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian and the Heavenly Demon Religion, the laws of the primordial realm were hazy. It was a pure power, so it was impossible to tell which laws it was. Only today did Jinshin learn that the Divine King was actually an expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword. Haha, the cloud plane may be large, but I can go wherever I want. How can I overstep my boundaries? Huayan's voice rang out from the demonic clouds. Afterwards, he slowly emerged from the clouds. However, he was not alone. 3 figures hovered quietly behind him. The presences they gave off had all reached the level of the Divine King. Pingtian, I expected you to appear a long time ago. However, do you really think you can protect yourself just because you've just reached the primordial realm? Huayan sneered before saying to the 3 people behind him, Go, capture Jinshin and that woman. Yes, sir. The 3 Divine King experts behind Huayan replied together. Afterwards, they moved towards Jinshin and Kea at the same time. Leave quickly, the Divine King called out to Jinshin. With a wave of his hand, the laws of the primordial realm descended. Dazzling sword chi turned into a huge streak of light, sweeping towards the 3 Divine King experts with devastating power. An attack from a primordial realm expert was terrifying. Even though the 3 Divine Kings were not weak, having reached the late Divine King level, they were not supreme Divine Kings like the Divine King after all. As a result, the 3 of them shivered when they faced a casual attack from the Divine King. The presence of death approached them as if the end of the world had arrived. Huayan appeared before the 3 of them like he had teleported. He blocked the Divine King's attack with composure and said, Pingtian, our battle last time still hasn't ended. Why don't we fight again in outer space? With that, Huayan did not wait for the Divine King's agreement. He directly attacked the Divine King. The might of Huayan's attack this time was simply like the difference between heaven and earth when compared to before. He had only struck out casually before. He did not use the laws of the primordial realm. He had only used a hand condensed from demonic aura to deal with Jinshin. This was because he knew that the Divine King would definitely secretly protect Jinshin. As a result, He had only struck out earlier to draw the Divine King out and prevent the Divine King from launching a sneak attack at a crucial moment. Now that the Divine King had appeared, he no longer feared him. He attacked with his full strength right from the start. The Divine King was stern. Huayan's attack was just too powerful. If he blocked it, the shockwaves would be enough to cause great damage to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. With no other choice, he could only charge into the sky and fly towards outer space. Huayan looked at the Divine King's figure. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, he shot into the sky as well, chasing after the Divine King. On the other side, Jianshun and Kea had already fled into the distance as quickly as they could. Behind them, the three Divine King pursued with lightning speed. As the two of them were late over gods, they were naturally slower than the three late god kings. As a result, the distance between them rapidly shrank. Jianshun and Kea did not flee towards the Tianyuan family. Instead, they left the Tianyuan family and fled towards the outskirts of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. With the Tianyuan family's current strength, it was impossible for them to stop the three Divine Kings from the heavenly demon religion. Even with the Divine King-level formations protecting the Tianyuan family, it was impossible for them to stop the three late Divine Kings, even with Muku. As a result, if they fled back to the Tianyuan family, it would only bring disaster to the clan. The power of Jinshin's soul had basically been depleted when he used the two strands of profound sword chi. Right now, he was recovering the power of his soul with the soul recovery pills he had purchased from the Xiandao dynasty. As a result, it was basically Kea who carried him as they fled. However, Kea used techniques that shocked Jinshin once again. She had used some kind of secret technique that seemed to have fused with the world, allowing her to move unbelievably fast. For a moment, the three Divine King actually struggled to catch up to her. You won't be able to escape. It's best if you surrender obediently. One of the Divine Kings from the heavenly demon religion called out from behind. He radiated with a tremendous, terrifying pressure. He formed a seal with one hand before suddenly extending a finger. With that, the space in a range of 10 kilometers suddenly shook. It actually froze at that moment. Jianshun and Kea were currently in the frozen space. Immediately, the two of them felt like a mysterious power wanted to imprison their bodies, making them feel like they were in a swamp. Their movements became abnormally sluggish, and their speed of escape plummeted. They were less than 10 kilometers away from each other. As soon as Jianshun and Kea slowed down, the three Divine Kings immediately caught up. They struck out at the same time. Two of them targeted Jianshun, while the remaining one dealt with Kea. Immediately, terrifying ripples of energy shook up the surroundings. The three late Divine Kings unleashed their might. Even though it was not as spectacular as a primordial realm expert, it was still shocking. Jianshun bellowed out at the sky. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as battle intent surged from him. He equipped the damaged armor as well. He swung his sword and shot out 2 strands of golden sword chi. Even though the power of his soul had not recovered yet, preventing him from using the profound sword chi, he still possessed some battle prowess at the very least. On the other side, Kea struck out as well. She was extremely stern as the power of the laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around her. As she moved her hands, the power of the 3 laws condensed into 3 swords that suddenly shot out. The Divine King who had attacked Kea raised an eyebrow in surprise. He murmured, These laws are rather strange. The Divine King of the heavenly demon religion had also sensed that the laws Kea used seemed to be different from ordinary people's. However, before he could think too much about it, their attacks collided heavily with a boom. Spurt. Kea vomited a mouthful of blood as she was blown far away like a broken kite. Even though the laws she grasped were different from ordinary people, and she had used 3 laws at the same time, which was extremely shocking, she was only a late over god in the end. The difference between her and the late Divine King was just too great. The difference was so great that even with 3 laws, she was unable to make up for it. At the same time, Jianxin fought against the 2 Divine Kings. In just a single clash, he vomited a large amount of blood and organs as he was blown away like Kea. The startling rainbow sword in his hand had dimmed as well. A tiny crack had even appeared on the spine of the sword, spreading across the entire blade. The late Divine King was just too powerful, and the two of them had struck out together. Even with the protection of his god artifact armor, Jianshun was unable to endure it. He became extremely heavily injured. Of course, most importantly, his god artifact armor had only been repaired on the surface, making it seem like it was in perfect condition. In reality, it was unable to unleash the defenses of a god artifact at all. Jianshun constantly vomited blood as he was blown away. Every single mouthful of blood contained bits of organs. If he faced the early Divine King, he could still put up a fight and emerge victorious. However, once he faced the late Divine King, he was unable to fight back at all. The difference between the late Divine King and the early Divine King was just too great. At this moment, Kea caught up to Jianshun with a pale face and a sliver of blood on her lips. She grabbed Jianshun and fled into the distance with gritted teeth without any hesitation. Chapter 1978. Jianshun coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood as he coldly glanced at the three Divine King in hot pursuit. Afterwards, he wrapped his left arm around Kea's waist and formed a seal with his right hand. He used a linear lightning release. Kea immediately stiffened when Jianshun wrapped his arm around her waist. She looked at Jianshun with mixed feelings. In her memory, other than her own father, no other man had ever touched her delicate body like this. In addition, in the depths of her heart, she also had an extremely strong resistance to her body being so intimately touched by a man. At the same time, the resistance in her heart grew stronger and stronger. It was as if there was a voice constantly reminding her, almost shaking her will and making her resist Jianshun's actions. However, before Kea could think too much, she suddenly felt her body sink. Her surroundings blurred in a single moment. Everything around her turned into hazy streaks of light that flashed past her eyes. Jianshun had already used the linear lightning release. He and Kea were both wrapped in light as they turned into bolts of lightning, shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. Using the phrase 1,000 kilometers in a single instant was not enough to describe their speed. It was 10,000 kilometers in a single instant, or even several tens of thousand kilometers. The three Divine King from the heavenly demon religion narrowed their eyes. Jianshun and Kea were so fast that all three of them became stunned. Their speed had basically surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Only the senses of the soul could capture them. Chase them. We can't let them get away. One of the Divine Kings bellowed out and immediately used a secret technique with the other two. Their speed suddenly increased as well, turning into three blurs as they pursued. Jianshun's linear lightning release was very fast, but the duration of the linear lightning release was just too short. It was impossible for him to exceed the range of the senses of a God King's soul in such a short amount of time. As a result, even though Jianshun and Kea had used the linear lightning release to escape from the sight of the three Divine Kings, they were still within the range of their senses. Over 100,000 kilometers away, the light around Jianshun and Kea gradually vanished. The terrifying speed from the linear lightning release also returned to normal. Behind the two of them, the three Divine Kings from the heavenly demon religion had already vanished. However, the two of them understood that they had not shaken off the three Divine Kings. As a matter of fact, they could even clearly sense that three extremely powerful presences were pursuing them from afar. With their speed, they would catch up to them in just a few seconds. Jianshun, what do we do now? Kea broke free from Jianshun's arm without leaving a trace as he asked in worry. Go. Just when Jianshun wanted to say something, he aggravated his wounds. He began to cough violently and vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood and organs. Even though he had only clashed with the two Divine Kings once, they were still late Divine Kings. Jianshun was extremely injured from that clash. If it were not for his chaotic body, he probably would have collapsed long ago. Jianshun, how are you? Heal up first. Let me take care of you, Kea said in concern. Jianshun shook his head and silently circulated his chaotic force to heal. At the same time, he swallowed a large number of healing pills and several soul recovery pills to recover the power of the soul. Only then did he say with great difficulty in a rather weak voice, "You're not as fast as them. Right now, we only have a chance of escaping if I use my sword technique to take you with me. As long as we reach the divine kingdom of Qingyang, we'll be able to shake them off. Let's go." With that, Jianshun wrapped his left arm around Kea's waist again. He formed a seal with his right hand and continued to use the linear lightning release. Now that they were in danger, he could no longer care about the concept of physical contact between men and women. Escaping from the pursuit of the three divine kings was more important than anything else. Kea's feelings were extremely mixed. She would feel extremely conflicted whenever she came into close contact with Jianshun. However, as soon as she thought about the danger she and Jianshun were facing, she could only suppress the conflict in her heart helplessly. Swish! Under Kea's mixed feelings, she and Jianshun were enveloped by a streak of light once more. They shot off with lightning-like speed, crossing several tens of thousand kilometers in a single instance. They moved extremely quickly. Even late divine kings would struggle to catch up to them with such speed. Even though the three divine kings from the heavenly demon religion had used secret techniques to increase their speed, they were still unable to travel several tens of thousand kilometers in a single instance. However, there was a flaw to Jianshun's linear lightning release as well, which was that it could not be maintained for long periods of time. It was not like the three divine kings behind them, who could maintain their current speed for extended periods of time. As a result, every time Jianshun stopped using the linear lightning release, the distance between the two of them would be shortened once more. This forced Jianshun to constantly use the linear lightning release. Fortunately, the depletion of his chaotic force was extremely slow, and ever since he started cultivating the chaotic body, he had never run out of chaotic force due to prolonged battles. Otherwise, he probably would not have been able to sustain the pursuit of the three late divine kings with his cultivation as a late overgod if he had to use the linear lightning release so frequently. The land and endless mountains and rivers receded rapidly. As the two parties pursued, they left the territory of the divine kingdom of Pingtian very soon and entered the divine kingdom of Qingyang. As they fled, Jianshun's wounds rapidly healed under the terrifying regeneration of the chaotic body. Even though he focused all of his attention on fleeing, his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, they gradually improved. Kea's wounds had visibly improved after ingesting the healing pills. Jianshun did not slow down at all. After entering the divine kingdom of Qingyang, he quickly determined his location before using the linear lightning release to flee again. Behind them, the three divine kings from the heavenly demon religion pursued relentlessly. They maintained a distance of several tens of thousand kilometers the entire time. Although the distance seemed to be very far, for experts like them, it was only a matter of 2 or 3 breaths. As a result, Jianshun did not dare to relax at all. Before long, Jianshun arrived in a barren mountain range within the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He brought Kea to a hidden valley with great familiarity. He directly shot a strand of sword chi at a smooth stone wall. With a boom, the stone wall was smashed open, revealing a cave hidden within. With a flash, Jianshun had already entered the gloomy cave with Kea. They arrived at the end of the cave as quickly as possible. There was an intact teleportation formation on the ground here. At the same time, a terrifying pressure was transmitted over, causing the mountains to tremble. As soon as Jianshun and Kea slowed down, the three divine kings immediately caught up. They moved extremely quickly, to the point where they could be seen as tiny specks on the horizon. Jianshun was stern. He immediately brought Kea to the teleportation formation. With a wave of his hand, he tossed out several divine crystals to activate the formation. Under a powerful flash of white light, the two of them completely vanished. However, just when Jianshun was about to be teleported away, he suddenly tossed out a fist-sized, transparent crystal. Afterwards, when he and Kea completely vanished from the formation, the crystal produced a great sound and loudly exploded. Not only did it completely destroy the teleportation formation on the ground, but it also directly collapsed the entire cave. The three divine kings of the heavenly demon religion arrived in front of the collapsed cave as well. Their faces were extremely sunken. They've already fled through the teleportation formation. However, the level of the teleportation formation isn't very high, so they can't have traveled too far. They should still be within the range of our senses. One of the divine kings said with a deep voice as his demonic aura surged around him. Afterwards, the three of them immediately expanded the senses of their souls to search for Jianshan and Kea. At this moment, Jianshan and Kea had already appeared in an ancient mountain range within the divine kingdom of Datian. There was also a teleportation formation that had been set up there in perfect condition. Jianshan had personally set up these teleportation formations after killing the three over-gods of the heavenly demon religion. It was a path of retreat for the Tianyuan family. However, he had never thought that the people of the Tianyuan family would not use the teleportation formations he had set up back then. Instead, they would save his life. I never thought that there would be a hidden teleportation formation in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. It's all thanks to this teleportation formation. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for us to escape from the three divine kings. Kea patted his chest in the gloomy cave as he spoke with lingering fear. Afterwards, he looked at Jianshan and asked, "Jianshan, where are we right now? We should have escaped from the three divine kings by now, right?" Jianshan remained stern. He shook his head when he heard Kea's question. "We're within the divine kingdom of Datian right now. Although it's extremely far away from the divine kingdom of Qingyang, the three of them are divine king experts after all, and they've all reached late divine king. The senses of their souls are extremely powerful, able to envelop an entire divine kingdom effortlessly. As a result, we're probably still within the range of their senses." However, as soon as Jianshan finished speaking, his and Kea's faces both changed. At that moment, the two of them could clearly sense the extremely powerful senses of the soul sweep over them. Just the pressure from the senses of the soul was enough to make the two of them feel as heavy as a mountain. "They've already found us. Let's continue with the teleportation. I'd like to see whether the senses of the Divine King's late Divine King can extend from the Divine Kingdom of Qingyang to the Heavenly Moon Empire," Jianshan said coldly. Jianshan said coldly. He pulled Kaya into the teleportation formation and activated it again, leaving the cave. Without any exception, Jianshan destroyed the teleportation formation in the Divine Kingdom of Datian when they left to prevent the three Divine Kings from using it. As a result, the three divine kings of the heavenly demon religion could only slowly fly to the Heavenly Moon Empire if they wanted to catch up to them. Chapter 1979. The divine king and Huai and continued to engage in an intense battle in outer space. Sword chi crisscrossed the surroundings as sword intent surged. Every single strand of sword chi was as resplendent as a waterfall, like a river of stars. They radiated with devastating power. The Divine King was a primordial realm expert, and his laws of the sword had reached sword immortal. Sword chi permeated his surroundings as countless illusionary swords danced around him. Right now, he really seemed like an immortal of the sword. He seemed like he was floating in the air. On the other side, Huayan surged with demonic aura. He controlled the laws of darkness, overturning light and obscuring the sun and moon, causing them to dim. He clashed with the Divine King's laws of the sword time and time again. The battle between the two of them seemed to be extremely intense, but they did not actually engage in a battle to the death. However, even with that being the case, the shockwaves from their battle were devastating, causing space to distort and space to become chaotic. They kept each other busy so that they did not have the energy to worry about Jianshan. This was already the limit of the Divine King's abilities. He was unable to do anything about the three Divine King who pursued Jianshan. The heritage of the current Divine Kingdom of Pingtian was just too shallow. Even though they already possessed a primordial realm expert, they still only had a single Grand Imperial Protector as a Divine King. Moreover, the Grand Imperial Protector was only an early Divine King. He was powerless against the danger that Jinshin faced. At this moment, Jinshin successfully entered the territory of the Heavenly Moon Empire after passing through the teleportation formation. After destroying the teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire, he and Kea shot towards the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire with lightning speed. Along the way, Jinshin ingested some more healing pills. Coupled with the regeneration of his chaotic body, he recovered as quickly as he could. Kea also ingested healing pills as he traveled as quickly as he could with Jinshin. "Jinshin, where are we going next?" Kea asked. This was the first time she had left the Dong and province since coming to the Saint's world, and she had escaped from the pursuit of 3 experts. She was completely unfamiliar with the Saint's world, so she had no idea what to do now. After hearing Kea's words, Jinshin pondered for a moment and said, "Now that we've been targeted by the heavenly demon religion, we definitely can't return to the Tianyuan family. Therefore, we can only flee further away and completely escape their pursuit. Our greatest enemy isn't the 3 Divine King, but one of the 3 vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan. Although Huayan has been kept busy by the Divine King, it definitely won't last for long. As a result, we need to find a way to avoid him." The light in Jinshin's eyes flickered when he reached there. He frowned and thought for a while before making up his mind. He said, "Let's go to the Blood Sun Empire." Before long, Jinshin and Kea arrived at the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. They did not stop at all. After paying quite a hefty fee, they went to the Blood Sun Empire through the teleportation formation there. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. They were supreme, and their authority in the southern region was equivalent to the Shi dynasty in the northern region. They were supreme existences. Now that Jinshin had caught the attention of the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, if there was a place in the southern region that could make a primordial realm expert like Huayan fear, it would be the eternal Blood Sun Empire. At the same time, in the northern region of the Cloud Plain, in the imperial palace of the Shi Empire, a talented, beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s sat in a pavilion with a troubled expression. She stared at an embroidered box on a stone table as she sighed constantly. The woman was Princess Tai, and of the Shi dynasty. "Sigh, it's already been so long, yet I still haven't completed what Jinshin told me to do. What should I do?" Princess Tai murmured. She stared at the box on the stone table in a rather dull manner as she was troubled. "It's all my fault. I didn't think so much when I agreed to Jinshin's request. I thought it would be a piece of cake and that I could complete it easily. I never thought it would actually be so difficult. With Aunt's temper, I probably can't take out the box before her. However, I've never found an opportunity with Uncle." Princess Tan propped up her chin with her hands as she sighed powerlessly in the garden. Now, the box had basically become a sore point for her. After all, she had promised Jinshin that she would never be able to rest easy unless she personally gave the box to the Empress or the Emperor. Sister Tyan, why are you here alone? And why are you staring at the box in a daze? What's inside the box?" At this moment, a rather mischievous voice rang out from behind Princess Tyan. A mischievous girl who only seemed to be 15 or 16 in palace robes stood behind Princess Tyan. She had a faint smile on her face as her large, bright eyes looked around. They were filled with mischief and liveliness. Soon after, she arrived in front of the stone table in a flash. She picked up the brocade box on the table and giggled. "Big Sister Tin, is the thing in the box a present that you prepared for Banger?" Banger is a little eager to see what this present is. As she spoke, the girl who called herself Banger opened the brocade box without any hesitation. "Banger, don't. This belongs to someone else," Princess Tyan reminded her, but it was already too late. Banger had already opened the box. Inside the brocade box, there wasn't any priceless treasure. There was only an extremely ordinary-looking jade pendant. Looking at the item in the brocade box, Bing-er's expression froze. Her originally excited mood instantly turned into disappointment. She took the jade pendant in the brocade box and looked at it casually. Pursing her lips, she said, "What is this?" "It's just an ordinary jade pendant. Why would it need to be stored in such an expensive box? I thought it was something good." "Bing, how can you be so rude?" Princess Tyan frowned as she complained to Bing, with great dissatisfaction. However, even though she was stern right now, there was a sliver of love for Bing in her eyes. As she said that, Princess Tyan snatched the jade pendant from Bing, and could not help but study it. In reality, she had always been extremely curious about the item in the box. After all, this was a gift that Jianshan had ordered her to personally give to the Empress or the Emperor. Without even thinking about it, she knew that the item inside was extremely important. However, when Princess Tai looked at the jade pendant in her hand, she felt extremely doubtful and perplexed. She could tell with a single glance that the jade pendant was nothing valuable. It was made of extremely ordinary material. It was something that no one would take an extra glance at in the imperial palace of the Shi dynasty. The only thing that was worth looking at was that the patterns on the jade pendant were extremely exquisite. However, Princess Tai was rather confused by the two words Shiyu carved on it. "Is this the item that Jianshan wanted me to personally give to aunt and uncle?" Princess Tai became covered in cold sweat. At that moment, she felt extremely fortunate that Bing had opened the box and let her know what was inside beforehand. Otherwise, if she really did give such an ordinary jade pendant to her aunt and uncle, it would truly be embarrassing. Even if her aunt and uncle did not blame her, she would still be too ashamed to show her face. "Xian." At this moment, a rather dignified voice rang out. The dignified empress appeared in the imperial gardens and slowly made her way towards Princess Tyan. Aunt." Princess Tyan was alarmed. She turned around and looked at the empress, who was slowly making her way over. Then she thought about how the open box was still on the stone table. She immediately became rather flustered. However, she seemed to have completely not realized that the jade pendant within the brocade box was still being held in her hand at this moment. Bing, greets the empress. The girl who called herself Bing, stopped being mischievous and bowed towards the empress politely. She was not as composed as Princess Tai and before the empress. Her face was filled with nervousness. The empress looked at Princess Tyan gently. Just when she was about to speak, she suddenly saw the jade pendant in Princess Tyan's hand. Chapter 1980. In the next moment, with a slight movement, the empress appeared before Princess Tai, and as if she had teleported. Before Princess Tai could react, she snatched the jade pendant from Princess Tyan's hand and studied it carefully. Even though the jade pendant was made from an extremely ordinary material, the exquisite patterns engraved on it made the empress' cold heart beat violently. In particular, when the empress saw the two words Shiyu on the jade pendant, her hand could not help but tremble violently. She was extremely familiar with the jade pendant. As a matter of fact, the appearance of the jade pendant, the exquisite patterns, and the two words engraved on it had already become an imprint. It had been deeply imprinted into the depths of her soul, making it unforgettable. This was because when she and Shiziyun were hunted down by their enemies and abandoned their daughter out of helplessness, they had left a jade pendant like this on their daughter as proof of her identity. Even though the jade pendant was not made from the same material as the one they had left behind, everything else was the same as the jade pendant they had left for their daughter. Sienna, this jade pendant. Where did you obtain this jade pendant from? The empress' eyes were glistening with tears. Her trembling voice was filled with urgency, mixed with excitement that anyone could hear. At that moment, the empress' calm heart seemed to become an erupting volcano. Her emotions fluctuated violently, making it difficult for her to remain calm. Over the past few years, she and Emperor Shi had been worried sick. They basically thought about their daughter at all times. They had even sent people to secretly search for her for 2,000 years, but there was still no news at all. As time went on, their missing daughter had basically become a sore point for them. It was an eternal pain in their hearts. This was because they had failed to find any clues in 2,000 years. In this cruel world where the strong reign supreme, they had no idea whether their daughter was still alive or not. However, now that the empress, who had already felt some despair, suddenly saw the jade pendant she had left for her daughter. The flames of hope ignited in her heart once more. Her daughter, who had been missing for 2,000 years, suddenly had a clue. This huge surprise made the Empress extremely excited. Princess Tyan stared at her aunt in a daze. She was completely bewildered. She was rather confused. She really could not understand. Wasn't it just an ordinary piece of jade? Why would her usually cold aunt react so intensely? As for Bing, she was even more dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the Empress, and her mischievous little face was filled with shock. At this moment, she even suspected that the celestial Empress she saw was an impostor. This was because in her memories, the Empress had always been cold and proud, keeping everyone at a distance. She would always be cold to everyone. Only when she saw Big Sister Great and would she show kindness. But now, she actually saw tears in the Empress' eyes. She saw excitement on the Empress' face. This was an unbelievable thing in Bing's opinion. Even though Princess Tyan was very confused, she still asked, "Aunt, do you remember when I said there was a supreme overgod called Jinshin? In the past, the supreme overgod gave Xian an embroidered box and told Xian to personally hand it to aunt or uncle. This jade pendant was the only item in the embroidered box." What? The thing in the brocade box was actually this jade pendant? The Empress's face was filled with regret. She naturally remembered the brocade box clearly. Back then, she did not care about an item given to her by an overgod. However, she had never thought that the item in there would be clues to her daughter who had been missing for 2,000 years. "No, I have to tell Ziyun about something so important." The Empress completely vanished, leaving Princess Tai and Bing standing in the garden in confusion. In the Shi dynasty, Emperor Shi sat on the throne in his 9 dragons robes and presided over the affairs of state within a majestic discussion hall. Below him, officials stood in an orderly fashion. All of them were respectful. Zun zun. At this moment, the Empress' voice rang out. She held the jade pendant in her hand as she flew over as a blur, attracting the attention of all the officials. "Xian'er, why are you in such a hurry?" Emperor, she sat on the throne and looked at the Empress. He was very confused. "Zun, look." The Empress arrived before Emperor Shi and directly passed the jade pendant to Emperor Shi. When the Shi Emperor saw the jade pendant, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He stood up from his throne out of reflex as an extremely terrifying presence radiated from his body uncontrollably. Like a surging wave, it wreaked havoc in the entire discussion hall, forcing all the officials back. "Where did this jade pendant come from?" Emperor Shi asked. His voice trembled with excitement. As the mighty emperor of the Shi Empire, he struggled to control his emotions at this moment. The Empress explained the origins of the jade pendant in a few words. "Let's go see Xian'er." After learning the origins of the jade pendant, Emperor Shi was even more anxious than the Empress. He did not even bother with the affairs of state. He directly vanished from the discussion hall with the Empress, leaving behind all the officials looking at each other. Princess Tai and Bing remained where they were in the Imperial Garden. Clearly, the two of them had yet to recover from their shock. At this moment, there was a flash, and the dignified Emperor Shi and the Empress appeared beside Princess Tai, and like they had teleported. "Xian, where is Jinshin who left behind this jade pendant right now?" Emperor Shi directly asked. His voice was filled with urgency. Uncle." Only now did Princess Tai return to her senses. She was stunned when she saw Emperor Shi suddenly appear before her, but she returned to her senses very quickly. She said, Uncle, when Jinshin gave this jade pendant to Xian'er, he was still in the Xiandao dynasty. Xian'er cannot be certain whether he's still there or not. Let's go to the Xiandao dynasty. Emperor Shi was a decisive person. He immediately left the Shi dynasty with Princess Tai and the Empress, directly making his way to the Xiandao dynasty. Since Emperor Shi was traveling, he naturally would not be too shabby. As a result, 2 subjects of the imperial family who were also at the primordial realm accompanied him. After learning about his daughter's whereabouts, the Shi Emperor was clearly in a panic. He went as far as to personally take action, using his supreme cultivation as a chaotic prime to take everyone on the journey. A world with a single thought, and an illusion with a single step. In just 5 or 6 steps, he crossed a huge distance, directly arriving above the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire from the Xi Empire. Emperor Xi's personal arrival shook up the entire Xiandao dynasty. All the primordial realm experts in the Xiandao dynasty emerged from seclusion and welcomed him politely. Aside from Tian Shuang, there were 2 other ruddy old men among the primordial realm experts of the Xiandao dynasty. They bowed towards Emperor Xi as they felt uneasy inside. In the past few years, Emperor Xi had made a name for himself through slaughter. As a result, the 3 primordial realm experts of the Xiandao dynasty were rather uneasy with Emperor Xi's arrival. They all thought back to whether they had participated in the hunt for Emperor Xi in the past. Is Jianshun in your Xiandao dynasty? However, to the surprise of the 3 primordial realm experts, Emperor Xi asked about a person called Jianshun as soon as he arrived. The 2 ruddy old men among the 3 primordial realm experts of the Xiandao Empire became doubtful when they heard that name. A gleam of light flashed through Tian Shuang's eyes. She said after some thought, Emperor Xi, Jianshun has already left our Xiandao dynasty. If I've guessed correctly, he should be in a place called the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region. The southern region, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Emperor Xi murmured before clasping his hands at Tian Shuang to express his gratitude. He immediately hurried off to the southern region with everyone. Emperor Xi did not take a planar teleportation formation. With his cultivation as a chaotic prime, he moved even faster than teleportation formations on the cloud plane. A few figures flew through the air with lightning speed in the Dong and province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. They directly entered the province and stopped above the Tianyuan family in the end. The person at the front seemed to be in his 40s. He wore purplish-golden robes and possessed a rather dignified bearing. He looked down at the Tianyuan family coldly from above. The middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Eternal Blood Sun Empire. He directly found the Tianyuan family through the information provided by the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. 9th prince. The Tianyuan family is only a small clan. Is the theft of the Flower of Ways really related to them? A divine king behind the 9th prince asked carefully. The 9th prince hovered in the air as he stared at the Tianyuan family below emotionlessly. He said, the person from the Earth Spirit sect told me through an anonymous jade slip that several decades ago, Jianshun assisted the soul of a primordial realm expert in the divine king Duanmu's dwelling. She obtained some items left behind by Duanmu and used them to recover her body. At that time, the primordial realm expert who had just recovered her body was only an overgod. However, recently, Jianshun was targeted by the commander of the 9th Army of the Heavenly Demon Religion, Yashulian. In the end, he was saved by a primordial realm expert, and even Yashulian was captured. It's extremely likely that this primordial realm expert was the one who obtained some items from the divine king Duanmu and recovered her body with Jianshun's assistance. The 9th prince stood with his arms behind his back and said slowly, even if she was a primordial realm expert when she was still alive, it's impossible for her to recover so quickly unless she possesses extremely precious heavenly resources. The Flower of Ways just happens to be one of those extremely precious heavenly resources. As a result, I'm basically certain that the person who stole the Flower of Ways is the primordial realm expert behind Jianshun. As he spoke, the 9th prince's face darkened. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He had already realized that the Flower of Ways had probably been devoured already, but he had to avenge it. Without the Flower of Ways, the time it would take for him to reach the primordial realm would be extended indefinitely. Even with his extraordinary talent, breaking through the bottleneck between godhood and the primordial realm would be anything but easy. The more the 9th prince thought about it, the more furious he became. In the end, it turned into surging, killing intent, and he directly threw a punch at the Tianyuan family below. Boom! With a great sound that shook up the entire province, the divine king-level formation that protected the Tianyuan family directly collapsed from the Ninth Prince's punch. Chapter 1981. With the destruction of the protective formation, the Tianyuan clan that had been hidden within was clearly exposed to everyone's eyes. However, the Tianyuan family was no longer as unharmed as before. The Ninth Prince's attack was just too powerful. Not only did it destroy the divine king-level protective formation, but the powerful ripples of energy even destroyed a third of the Tianyuan family. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. If it were not for the protective formation that blocked most of the Ninth Prince's attack, the entire Tianyuan family probably would have been obliterated. However, even with that being the case, many of the weaker servants and guards in the Tianyuan family were still affected and heavily injured. The sudden occurrence threw the Tianyuan family into chaos. Many people ran out in a panic. They all paled when they saw the divine, king-level protective formation that had completely collapsed. Shiyu, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the other elders gathered together. They stared at the sky sternly. Even Siyu, Ruijin, Honglian, Blackfish, and Xiongzhong from the world of Forsaken Saints emerged from the Forbidden Grounds. They looked at the damaged protective formation in the surroundings and became extremely stern. They all knew that the protective formation of the Tianyuan family was on the level of a divine king-level protective formation. It could be described as extremely powerful in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, at that moment, the defensive formation that they thought to be impregnable shattered without any signs at all. That made all of them realize just how powerful the invaders were. May I ask how our Tianyuan family has offended seniors? For you to shatter our Tianyuan family's protective formation as soon as you've arrived? Shiyu stared at the Ninth Prince and the others in the sky with an ugly expression as she said coldly. Siyu arrived beside Shiyu as well. He stared at the Ninth Prince and the others in the sky emotionlessly. A vicious light flickered through his sharp eyes. The other elders of the Tianyuan family all stood behind Shiyu and Siyu. They were the only two overgods in the Tianyuan family right now. The face of the divine king behind the Ninth Prince immediately sank when he heard Shiyu's cold question. He called out, "How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to? This is the Ninth Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Why don't you kneel and greet him when you see him?" The expressions of the people of the Tianyuan family changed once again when they heard that. They could not help but look at one another. Many of them were filled with doubt. They had no idea when the Tianyuan family had offended the Ninth Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. As for Shiyu, her heart suddenly sank. The Ninth Prince had come with ill intentions. She sensed that the situation was bad. The consequences of offending the Blood Sun Empire were even more severe than offending the heavenly demon religion. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. They possessed supreme status in the southern region. Before them, even ancient empires with deep heritage like the Heavenly Moon Empire would have to lower their heads, let alone the Tianyuan family. "Which one of you is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianshun?" The Ninth Prince asked. His face was sunken, and his voice was bone-chillingly cold. "Your Highness, unfortunately, the patriarch is not in the clan right now." Shiyu clasped her fist and said emotionlessly, "He's not here." A gleam of light flashed through the Ninth Prince's eyes. Just when he wanted to say something, his face suddenly changed. His eyes were immediately filled with heavy, cold, killing intent. With a raise of his hand, terrifying energy gathered, condensing into a huge hand that reached towards the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. Boom! With a muffled sound, the entire ground shook violently. The Ninth Prince had used his palm of energy to directly pull out a secret room deep underground in the Forbidden Grounds. The tough metal that held the room together shattered in the Ninth Prince's hand. The secret room was where newbies cultivated. With the destruction of the room, newbies naturally fell out as well. Along with him was a 3,000-meter-long golden-striped silver snake that was only as thick as a wrist. The golden-striped silver snake had already lost all signs of life. It had lost a large amount of vitality, causing its body to wither slightly. The expressions of the divine king who had come with the ninth prince all changed when they saw the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. Surging killing intent radiated from their bodies uncontrollably. No wonder we didn't find the golden python's corpse in the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. You've actually brought it here. So your Tianyuan family really is involved with the Flower of Ways being stolen. The Tianyuan family sure is bold. You even dare to covet what belongs to the ninth prince. Even wiping out your entire clan for such a heavy crime wouldn't be going too far. The divine king behind the ninth prince all said coldly. Killing intent surged from all of them. They were tempted to wipe out the entire Tianyuan family with a single wave of their hand. As for the ninth prince, he stared at the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. His face was extremely sunken. At that moment, his chest was already brimming with fury, and surging killing intent was brewing within him. If he had only been slightly suspicious of Jinshan before, then he was extremely certain of his suspicions after seeing the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. Newbie stood up from the ground in a rather wretched manner. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but soon after, the furious roars of the divine king reached Newbie's ears, allowing him to understand what had happened. His face immediately became ugly. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared. One of the divine kings behind the ninth prince immediately appeared before Newbie's. He grabbed Newbie's neck firmly as his gaze was vicious. Killing intent surged as he said coldly, "How bold of you to absorb Jean Mang's essence. Jean Mang is a subordinate of the ninth prince, yet you've treated his corpse like this. I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." With that, the divine king tightened his grip, and with a clear crack, Newbie's neck was crushed to pieces. Even though Newbie's cultivation had increased from god to early over-god after absorbing a portion of Jean Mang's essence, he was still extremely puny before a divine king. He was unable to fight back at all. Afterwards, the divine king reached towards Newbie's head in an attempt to forcefully extract Newbie's soul from his body. Newbie's eyes narrowed to the size of needles. He stared fixedly at the divine king's hand as it approached him. His eyes were filled with reluctance, and he wanted to resist with everything he had. However, the difference in strength was just too great. Even if he used everything he had, it would be useless. Am I, the great Newbie's, going to die like this? No, I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept this. I've only just come to the Saint's world. I haven't seen all of its beauty yet. I haven't reached the limits of cultivation yet. Newbie's roared out furiously inside. Faced with such great danger, his survival instincts allowed him to unleash all of his potential. At this moment, the blood in his body was surging thousands of times faster than usual. On his face, on his arms, and in every part of his body, the blood vessels hidden under his skin were bulging, with a faint golden brilliance flowing through them. At that moment, Newbie's could clearly sense that the power of his bloodline was rapidly strengthening. He felt like his entire body was surging with power. However, this was still unable to change the outcome. Even if the power of his bloodline was strengthening and his battle prowess was increasing, it was still not enough for him to escape from the Divine King. After all, he was only an early overgod right now. Chapter 1982. Extremely powerful killing intent condensed on CU as the force of slaughter condensed on him. His wings had already risen high into the air, and they fused together like a blade. They slashed out with CU's killing intent. Sacred Feather had already used his full strength against the God King. He unleashed all of his strength without holding back at all. His presence was overwhelming as he pressed forward with an indomitable will. Even though he was only an early overgod, the power of his bloodline was extremely powerful as he was CU the Tiger Emperor. Coupled with the fact that he had comprehended the way of slaughter, his attack was extremely powerful. As a result, his attack was extremely powerful, exceeding the battle prowess he should have possessed at his current level of cultivation. The Divine King who grabbed Newbie's by the neck and planned on plucking out Newbie's soul cruelly sneered disdainfully when he sensed CU's attack. He sneered, "How dare an ant take on a tiger? You're looking to die." With that, The Divine King's hand that originally extended towards Newbies suddenly reached towards Siyu's blade-like wings. Siyu's wings had already gathered all his power. The power of the laws of the Way of Slaughter had also condensed on them. However, when his full-powered attack came in contact with the Divine King's hand, the Divine King managed to grab it. The great power within the wings was unable to harm his opponent at all. It's actually the Way of Slaughter. Not bad. The laws you've comprehended are very powerful, but it's a pity that your personal cultivation is just too weak, the Divine King said coldly. The God King said coldly. His gaze towards Sacred Feather was filled with iciness. Afterwards, his hand suddenly shook, and terrifying energy that was enough to devastate overgods erupted, striking Sacred Feather mercilessly. Sacred Feather opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body flew backward powerlessly. The sound of bones breaking could be heard from the wings on his back. White feathers fluttered in the air. Sacred Feather's pair of divine wings drooped powerlessly. Not only were they dyed red with blood, but even his body had turned blood red. He was bathed in blood. The Divine King's attack was extremely powerful. Although Siyu's bloodline was powerful, it was unable to make up for the tremendous difference in cultivation between an overgod and a Divine King. He was heavily injured from a single strike. Siyu, Ruijin, Honglian, and Black Fish all cried out. They arrived before Siyu with a single step. Their faces were filled with worry, and they immediately fished out pills to feed Siyu. Have you gotten the Ninth Prince's permission to save him? The Divine King behind the Ninth Prince said coldly. He clenched his hand gently, and the space around Ruijin, Honglian, and He Yu froze immediately. The Divine King comprehended the laws of space, so he could turn an entire region of space into a prison with a single thought. Ruijin, Honglian, and Black Fish were completely immobilized. They could not even move a finger or blink before a Divine King who had comprehended the laws of space. A painful grunt rang out. The Divine King who had snapped Newbie's neck had already pressed his right hand against Newbie's head. His face was filled with extreme cruelty, and his fingers had already pierced through Newbie's scalp, slowly digging in. Golden blood flowed from Newbie's head, dripping down his face. The Divine King's hand slowly approached Newbie's soul. Even though Newbie's bloodline had mutated due to his great reluctance and desire to live, strengthening it, it would not be more powerful than the Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor's bloodline, no matter how powerful it was. Even the Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor could not withstand a single blow from a God King, so it went without saying for him. Even though the Tianyuan family was furious after witnessing Newbie's fate, they really could not summon any power to resist the Divine King. At that moment, a deep sense of powerlessness filled everyone's chests. Shiyu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw what was happening. Her heart was filled with rage. When she saw that the Divine King's hand was about to touch Newbie's soul, determination suddenly filled her eyes. She no longer cared about her own life and struck out fearlessly. Jianshun had given her the grace of creation. Now that the Tianyuan family was in danger and Jianshun's friend, Newbie's, was in danger as well, she could not just watch this tragedy unfold without doing anything. Shiyu wielded her sword and unleashed a resplendent streak of light. She fused with her sword and slashed at the Divine King's arm. There really are quite a few people in the Tianyuan family who overestimate themselves. The Divine King who had captured Newbie sneered. He turned to look at Shiyu and blew out a breath. Swoosh! With that, the surroundings immediately began to howl. A terrifying storm of energy erupted from the Divine King's mouth, striking Shiyu as a terrifying shockwave. Shiyu came to a halt. That was not all. She could not help but retreat again and again before the storm of energy. Speak. Where is Jianshun, or I'll kill the 4 of you first. The Divine King who grasped the laws of space said coldly. As he slowly clenched his hand, the space around Ruijin and the others immediately began to crack. Under the Divine King's control, the space there began to shrink at a visible rate. Ruijin and the others who were trapped in the space rapidly shrank as the space around them rapidly compressed. Their clothes had already become tightly stuck to their bodies. The tremendous pressure from all directions caused their bodies to shrink at a visible rate. Blood leaked out from their pores under the pressure, dyeing their clothes red in an instant. If this continued, they would only explode in the end. In the face of such a situation, they had no way to resist at all. No, it's not just the four of them. There's also these people. The divine king who grasped the laws of space said indifferently. He gently extended a finger towards the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family behind Shiyu. At that moment, the space behind Shiyu froze as well. All the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family were trapped in there. These people included the ancestor of the Mo clan, Mo Ling, and Shiyu's foster father. Even Mo Yin was there. The entire Tianyuan family shivered in fear. The arrival of the ninth prince and the others had cast a shadow of death over the Tianyuan family. Shiyu's entire body trembled when she saw this. Suddenly, she bellowed out at the sky, and faint flames radiated from her body. The flames did not possess any heat, but with the appearance of the flames, Shiyu's presence actually skyrocketed. Very soon, she broke through the limits of early overgod and reached an even higher level. However, even though Shiyu's presence was increasing and her strength was increasing, her presence of life was weakening at a visible rate. Her long, black hair rapidly changed color. It became gray-white and in the end, snow-white. The fate of the Tianyuan family had deeply stimulated Shiyu. She burned her life force and soul regardless of the consequences in exchange for battle prowess that exceeded her current level of cultivation. Chapter 1983. Shiyu looked at the ninth prince. Her eyes were filled with undisguised fury and resentment. The disaster that the Tianyuan family faced today was all because of the ninth prince. Ninth prince, I'll kill you. Shiyu roared out furiously. She fused with her sword and stabbed towards the ninth prince with all the power she had gained from burning her life force. The sword shone resplendently, illuminating the entire provincial city. The strike was like a comet, shooting through the sky with extremely resplendent light. It possessed the color of burning life force, an unstoppable presence, and she used determination to die. The experts from the Divine King who had come with the ninth prince were all slightly stunned when they saw Shiyu attack the ninth prince. Afterwards, they smiled strangely. Their smiles were filled with deep disdain and mockery. The ninth prince was not like the wastrel young masters of large organizations who only knew how to use their status to throw their weight around. He was weak himself, the type who only put on a brave front. In reality, the ninth prince was the most powerful and terrifying person among them. His cultivation had reached the limits of the Divine King, and he was already preparing to break through to the primordial realm. Let alone over-gods burning their vitality and souls. Even some god kings burning their vitality and souls would not be able to harm the ninth prince at all before an expert like that. The ninth prince stared at Shiyu calmly. His eyes were cold, as if he was a high and mighty king looking at an ant. He did not do anything unnecessary in the face of Shiyu's attack that she had sacrificed her life for. All he did was gently wave his hand. He was calm and composed. Immediately, the sky changed color and the sun and moon lost their luster. The seemingly casual action of the ninth prince actually had the power to overturn the world. At this moment, he was like the ruler of the world. With a raise of his hand, he could destroy an entire region of a universe. Before Shiyu could even approach the ninth prince, she sensed an irresistible power assault her. Before this power, she felt like she was a lone boat in the vast ocean. She was so insignificant that she could not even take a single blow. Kacha! Shiyu's sword directly shattered when it came in contact with the ninth prince's power. It shattered into countless pieces with a crisp sound. The terrifying power passed through her arm and struck her body heavily with overwhelming force. Spurt! Shiyu vomited a mouthful of blood mixed with bits of organs. It turned into a bloody mist that drifted through the air, dyeing it red. As for Shiyu, she was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. As she flew backwards, her sword-wielding right hand had turned into a bloody mess. Even the bones in her hand had been reduced to dust. Following that, The flesh on her entire right arm rapidly disintegrated in midair. Her entire right arm was disappearing bit by bit. In a single moment, Shiyu's right arm had vanished, leaving behind only a puddle of blood on the ground. Shiyu flew very far away until she collided with the spatial barrier that trapped the upper echelons of the Tianyuan family. Only then did she fall heavily to the ground, constantly vomiting blood. Her presence plummeted in a single moment. She had completely withered away. She was on the brink of death. Behind her, Shiyu's foster father, Mo Xingfeng, stared at the white-haired Shiyu as she lay on ground. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with grief. Although Shiyu was not his daughter by blood, he had raised her single-handedly after all. His feelings for her were so deep that he had already treated her like his own child. However, his body was trapped there by the spatial force of the God King who grasped the power of laws. He couldn't move at all. Right now, he couldn't do anything. A painful voice rang out. Nubis' skull had been ripped open, and his soul had been forcefully extracted by the Divine King. At the same time, the spatial pressure around Regine, Honglian, and Blackfish had reached the limits of what they could endure. It made them bleed from all their orifices as all their bones cracked. Only Cu continued to endure it with great difficulty. The three of them gritted their teeth and used their great willpower to summon the origin energy armor they had worn on their way out from a lower world. However, it was useless. Under the pressure of the spatial force, their origin energy armor immediately became riddled with cracks before shattering. The ninth prince looked at this coldly and said, "I'll give you a few seconds to notify your patriarch, Jianshun, to return, or tell me who the primordial realm expert behind Jianshun is and where he is right now. Tell me, and I can grant you a quick death. Otherwise..." The ninth prince's eyes turned cold when he reached there. He glanced past the people of the Tianyuan family coldly and said with killing intent, "I'll make you wish you were dead." She raised her head and stared at the ninth prince resentfully. She said weakly, "If you want to kill us, then kill us. We will never contact the patriarch. However, I can guarantee you that if you wipe out our Tianyuan family, the patriarch will definitely wipe out your entire Blood Sun empire to avenge us." Shiyu's voice was filled with stubbornness. She would rather die than submit. The ninth prince's eyes turned cold. He reached out and pulled Shiyu over from afar. He grabbed her by the neck and lifted her into the air. He said, "You do have some backbone. However, the more backbone you have, the more miserable your end will be." The ninth prince glanced behind him and said, "Mo Yin, aren't you skilled in harvesting yin and yang? I'll bestow this woman to you now. Serve her well here." With that, the ninth prince directly tossed Shiyu behind him. There were two divine kings behind the ninth prince. They had not done anything since the beginning. When they saw the ninth prince toss Shiyu over, a perverted light immediately flashed through the eyes of one of them. He pulled Shiyu into his arms and sniggered, "Your Highness is wise. It would be quite the pity to kill such a beautiful woman just like that. Mo Yin will definitely obey your Highness' orders and serve this woman well." "Why? Don't even think about it." Shiyu's face changed when she heard their conversation. Determination filled her eyes, and she wanted to blow herself up. However, Mo Yin only touched Shiyu gently and sealed up all her cultivation, stopping her from blowing herself up. He sniggered, "Little beauty, don't think about dying so soon. You've cultivated for so many years, so you probably haven't tasted the affection of a man yet, right? However, there's no need to be impatient, because you'll experience the joy of being pampered by a man very soon. I guarantee you that you'll never forget that wonderful feeling for the rest of your life." Ha 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 ha. As he spoke, Mo Yin gently tore apart Shiyu's blood-soaked clothes in front of everyone. He did not move quickly. Instead, he moved extremely slowly. However, the perverted desire in his eyes only grew. The eyes of everyone from the Tianyuan clan almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this. However, all of them felt powerless before the ninth prince and the other divine king experts. They could not even protect themselves. However, at this moment, the calm space 1,000 meters above the Tianyuan clan suddenly began to ripple. It surged like water. Chapter 1984. At the very front was a middle-aged man. He wore the robes of a sovereign with 9 dragons. His resolute face gave off an unquestionable sense of dignity. Even though his presence was completely concealed, not leaking out at all, it was like the entire world was beneath his feet when he appeared. Behind the middle-aged man were 2 women. One of them looked to be in her 30s. She was graceful and elegant, and she still retained her charm. She also had a dignified face, but it was filled with anxiety and excitement. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was beautiful and gave off a noble presence. She lived like a princess, so people could tell with a single glance that she was of extraordinary birth. Behind them were 2 ruddy old men. They had concealed all of their presences, so no one could sense their existence, let alone see through their cultivation. This group of people was the Shi Emperor's group, who had traveled a great distance from the northern region. As soon as they arrived above the Tianyuan family, Emperor Shi and the Empress looked at the Tianyuan family below. Although many people had gathered in the Tianyuan family, Emperor Shi and his wife were both primordial realm experts, while Emperor Shi had become a chaotic prime. As a result, when they arrived, they felt a resonance from their bloodline clearly in their hearts. It made the 2 of them surge. Following the resonance from their bloodline, they both locked onto Shiyu. However, when they saw what was happening below, their eyes became bloodshot in a single instance. Surging killing intent erupted like a tsunami, plunging the surroundings into darkness. It caused the sun, moon, and stars in the sky to tremble. The temperature of the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian plummeted at that moment. The divine king and the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion engaged in an extremely intense battle in outer space. However, at this moment, a terrifying killing intent that even shocked them appeared. It shocked them to the point where they could not help but stop their battle and look in the direction of the Dong'an province. A chaotic prime, the divine king and vice leader Huayan both cried out. They became stern. A chaotic prime had appeared in the southern region, and this chaotic prime was in the Dong, and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The divine king was no longer able to remain calm. He no longer bothered with keeping Huayan busy. He directly returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian as quickly as he could. In the Earth Spirit sect of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, Sang Tu, suddenly opened his eyes. Surprise filled his face as he looked in the direction of the divine kingdom of Pingtian cautiously. What a powerful killing intent. This killing intent comes from a primordial chaos expert. Could it be that woman? The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, Sang Tu, became extremely stern. Now that a chaotic prime had suddenly appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, he could not help but connect it to the woman in white who had snuck into his secret room silently. No, it's not her. Her presence doesn't seem like it. Then what expert has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian and given off such powerful killing intent? Sang Tu could no longer sit still. He immediately stood up and hurried to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. At the same time, infinite primes from the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, which was as famous as the Earth Spirit sect, were alarmed as well. They all emerged from seclusion and hurried to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. A chaotic prime had appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. This was no small matter. They had to go and investigate. The killing intent that had suddenly appeared in the Tianyuan family of the Dong and province caused the 9th prince's face to change drastically. He suddenly turned his head towards the sky as disbelief filled his face. In front of this murderous intent, he felt a shiver from his soul. The killing intent was so powerful that it was enough to obliterate the world. The 9th prince felt like his soul was about to freeze. Even the 9th prince, who had reached the peak of the divine king realm, was like this, so it went without saying for the divine kings who had come with the 9th prince. They all became frightened. Emoyan stopped tearing at Shiyu's clothes as well. The flames of primitive desire within him seemed to have been doused with a bucket of cold water, completely extinguishing them. Emperor Shi and the Empress both cried out sorrowfully. Shiyu directly struck out with her hand, sending it towards Mo Yin with terrifying energy that caused the world to tremble. A Chaotic Prime's attack was just too great. It was earth-shaking. The Shi Emperor's furious palm strike directly destroyed space. A pitch-black spatial crack appeared in the sky, extending towards the demonic flames with lightning speed. Looking from afar, this black spatial fissure that extended towards the ground looked like a bolt of black lightning striking down. At that moment, the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire and the other god kings all felt like they were suffocating. Their hearts twitched heavily at that moment as all their hairs stood on end. Chills ran down their spines from head to toe. Be Chaotic Prime. The ninth prince lost his composure. His face changed drastically, and he immediately pressed his hand against his space ring. A jade talisman lay silently in a corner of his space ring. At that moment, the jade talisman had been reduced to dust silently. Demonic Flame's body silently turned into nothingness. He disappeared from the air, not even leaving behind a single speck of ash. Where he stood, there was only a broken space crack that was twisting and slowly mending itself. A mighty divine king had vanished before everyone just like that. Who knew whether he had been reduced to the most primitive particles by Emperor Shi's strike, or he had been sucked into the spatial crack? However, what was certain was that even if Mo Yin was a divine king, it was impossible for him to survive a furious strike from a Chaotic Prime. Emperor Shi's control over his power was extremely great. His furious strike only targeted Mo Yin, so not a single strand of energy leaked out. As a result, his strike did not produce any ripples of energy, nor did it affect anyone in the surroundings. It did not even harm a single blade of grass. However, the supreme pressure and terrifying momentum contained in his strike had an extremely strong mental impact on everyone present. You are you. Emperor Shi silently appeared before Shiyu. His burly figure began to tremble uncontrollably as tears filled his eyes. He called out emotionally, my daughter, I've finally found you. I've finally found you." The Empress ignored the blood on Shiyu and hugged her tightly. She began to sob uncontrollably. Her tears flowed uncontrollably like a fountain. She could not stop them. She had just found her beloved daughter who had been separated from for many years. This should have been a joyous matter, but when she saw her own flesh and blood in such a miserable state, her heart almost shattered. When she thought about how her daughter would have been doomed if she had come just a little later, the Empress felt lingering fear. Chapter 1985. Emperor Shi was filled with killing intent as well. His face was extremely sunken. He placed his hand on Shiyu's shoulder gently, and tremendous life force separated from his body. It was channeled into Shiyu's body in an extremely gentle manner. With the injection of life force, Shiyu, who had been on the brink of death, regained her vitality in a single instance. A sliver of color appeared in her dim eyes, and even her wounds healed rapidly. As a matter of fact, new flesh and blood even grew out of her severed right arm. Her severed arm was already recovering. After all, this was the tremendous life force of a Chaotic Prime. The life force might have been insignificant to Chaotic Primes, but to Shiyu, who was only an overgod, it was the power of creation, the power of regeneration, or even a second life. Princess Taiyin and the two old men who had come with Emperor Shi landed in the Tianyuan family as well. At this moment, the three of them stared at Shiyu in shock. Princess Tai and looked at the bloodied Shiyu in the Empress' arms. Her feelings were extremely mixed. If she had known earlier that the box Jianshan had given her would contain clues to her aunt's long-lost daughter, she would have forcefully handed the box to the Empress without any regard for anything else. Seriously, Jianshan, why didn't he directly tell me something so important? If he had told Anne about my sister's whereabouts earlier, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Princess Tai and was very displeased with Jianshan. As for the two old men who had come with Emperor Shi, they were shocked. They felt disbelief. In the Shi dynasty, everyone already knew that Emperor Shi did not have an heir. This was a publicly acknowledged fact. Yet now, Emperor Shi had suddenly gained a daughter, which left the two of them extremely surprised. At this moment, the divine king arrived in the Tianyuan family as well. He concealed all of his presence and kept an extremely low profile, such that only a few people sensed his arrival. However, after understanding the situation, the divine king did not say anything in an extremely sensible manner. Instead, he watched from one side. He stared at Emperor Shi, his wife, and the two old men sternly. His heart was in turmoil. He did not know the identities of these people. He only knew that the cultivation of any one of these four people far surpassed his own. The divine king beside the ninth prince had already become utterly frightened by the arrival of a chaotic prime. His face paled, so how could he be in the mood to care about the people of the Tianyuan family? He immediately removed the spatial shackles. The higher-ups of the Tianyuan family regained their freedom, including Regine, Honglian, and Blackfish. Everyone felt as if they had just escaped death. However, none of them said anything when they saw Shi Yu in the Empress' arms. They were all filled with shock. The patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, stared at Emperor Shi and the Empress with extremely mixed feelings. As for the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire, his face became even more uneasy. He studied Emperor Shi and the Empress seriously, but most of his attention was on Emperor Shi's 9 dragons robes. He's wearing dragon robes and is a chaotic prime. Don't tell me. As a figure of authority in the Blood Sun Empire, the ninth prince was naturally knowledgeable. He was far more knowledgeable than the divine king in this aspect. He guessed Emperor Shi's identity very quickly, which made his heart sink. Impossible. Doesn't the Emperor Shi of the Shi dynasty have no descendants? Why does he have a daughter now? And this daughter is... The ninth prince's face became extremely ugly. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty, and he quickly made up his mind. He began to retreat silently, wanting to leave this place silently. Before we find out whether my daughter was injured by someone else, no one is allowed to leave this place. However, as soon as the ninth prince moved, the Emperor's cold voice rang out. Immediately, a pressure enveloped the ninth prince. The ninth prince's body sank. The tremendous pressure caused his feet to directly sink into the ground, up to his knees. Seeing how it was impossible for him to leave secretly, the ninth prince could only brace himself and raise his hands as hard as he could. He clasped his fist and said, "I am the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. I greet the Shi Emperor and the Empress. It is truly an honor for the southern region that the Shi Emperor and the Empress have come in person. If there's anything you need me for, I am willing to do my best." Emperor Shi? The Empress? The divine king was greatly surprised. The ninth prince's identity as the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire had already surprised him. However, when the ninth prince mentioned the Shi Emperor and the Empress, the divine king immediately connected them to the eternal empire of the Shi Empire in the northern region. Emperor Shi? Is this chaotic prime in dragon robes the current emperor of the eternal Shi Empire of the northern region? Even with the divine king's composure, he struggled to maintain his composure at that moment. He looked at Shi Yu, who lay in the Empress' arms, and he was extremely shocked. However, Emperor Shi and the Empress remained indifferent after learning the ninth prince's identity. The Empress stared at the ninth prince coldly and said coldly, "Are you involved with the people who injured my daughter?" The Empress' voice was filled with killing intent. Without any doubt, she would even be bold enough to kill the ninth prince of the eternal Blood Sun Empire. The ninth prince's expression did not change. He clasped his fist. "You've misunderstood, Empress. The Emperor has personally dealt with the people who injured your daughter. I congratulate the Emperor and Empress on reuniting with your daughter." Nonsense. The person who injured Shi Yu and destroyed her arm was clearly you. As soon as the ninth prince finished speaking, Shi Yu's foster father, Mo Xingfeng, stood in the crowd and said furiously, "Humph, don't you dare slander me. Tianyuan family, if you dare to slander me again, wiping out your Tianyuan family is just a matter of a single word from me with my power. Even the divine kingdom of Pingtian won't be able to protect you." The ninth prince's eyes turned cold as he stared at Mo Xingfeng. His gaze was like a sharp sword that pierced through Mo Xingfeng's eyes and into his soul. Mo Xingfeng's body trembled violently as his complexion instantly turned pale. How awe-inspiring! The Empress snorted coldly. She held Shiyu with one hand as she directly swung her other hand towards the ninth prince. The hand, condensed from energy, landed heavily on the ninth prince's face, sending him flying. The slap was extraordinarily powerful. Half of the ninth prince's face had been reduced to a bloody mess. His entire chin had been shattered, and his face was covered in blood. The ninth prince, a mighty divine king with his peak cultivation, was like an infant before the empress. He was unable to fight back at all. This scene greatly impacted the hearts of the people from the Tianyuan family. They thought back to before. They had mobilized the entire power of their clan, yet they were unable to fight back at all before the ninth prince and the others. They could only watch as the end of the world descended. Yet now, the ninth prince and the others, who were extremely powerful in their eyes and could easily wipe out the entire Tianyuan family, were as weak as infants before the empress. The great contrast and dramatic change made all the people from the Tianyuan family feel like they were dreaming. The empress crouched on the ground with Shiyu in her arms. Shiyu's blood had already dyed her clothes red. She stared at the ninth prince, who she had sent flying with killing intent, and said coldly, "Is he telling the truth? Did you really cause Yuer's injuries? Yuer's arm really was destroyed by you." At this moment, Shiyu finally recovered after receiving the tremendous life force of a chaotic prime. Her severed right arm grew back as well. She struggled to her feet from the empress' embrace as she stared at the empress and emperor, Shi, in confusion. The empress immediately looked at Shiyu, and her vicious gaze softened at that moment. She shone with a motherly light as she asked in concern, "Child, how do you feel?" "Yuer, tell me who injured you. No matter who they are or what their status is, I will avenge you. I won't spare any of them." Emperor, Shi carefully supported Shiyu with his powerful arm. His gaze was gentle, and it was also filled with concern.